While my daughter was lying on the operating table, her chest cut open, fighting for every breath, her husband was popping champagne in a penthouse suite in Dubai with his mistress. He posted a photo with the caption, "Living the dream." I did not cry, I did not comment. I just picked up my phone and made one call to my banker. Execute protocol 0. Exactly 1 hour later, his credit cards were declined. His hotel room was locked, and he was stranded in a foreign desert with $0 to his name. And that was just the beginning of his nightmare. Before I tell you how I destroyed his life, piece by piece, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to protect your child from a monster in a designer suit. My name is Langston Bennett, and at 74 years old, I thought I was done fighting wars. I built a logistics empire that moves freight from Maine to Florida. I have crushed unions, I have outmaneuvered corporate raiders, and I have buried competitors. But 10 years ago, I sold the fleet. I bought a quiet cabin on the lake, and I traded my boardroom suit for a fishing vest. I thought my only battle left was with the bass in the water. I was wrong. It was a Tuesday morning. The air was crisp, and the water was glass. Then my phone rang. It was not a business call. It was the call every parent dreads. The call that makes your blood turn to ice. "Mr. Bennett, this is Memorial Hospital. Your daughter Maya has been in a catastrophic accident. I drove my old truck at 90 miles an hour, weaving through traffic like a man possessed. When I burst through the emergency room doors, I did not see the powerful CEO I used to be. I saw a terrified father. I saw my little girl Maya is 32. She is a pediatrician. She saves children for a living. She is the kindest soul I know, soft-spoken and generous to a fault. But there she was, lying on a gurney, surrounded by a swarm of doctors. Her beautiful face unrecognizable behind an oxygen mask and a neck brace. Her clothes were cut away, revealing bruising that turned her skin purple and black. A surgeon stepped forward. His scrubs were stained with her blood. He looked exhausted. "Mr. Bennett, we need to move fast." The brakes on her car failed. She went through a guardrail at 60 miles an hour. Her skull is fractured, and there is massive swelling in the brain. We need to perform a craniectomy immediately to relieve the pressure. If we do not operate now, she will die within the hour. "Do it," I said, my voice trembling. "Do whatever you have to do. Save her." The surgeon hesitated. He looked at his clipboard, then at me. "Sir, legally, we need the husband's consent. Maya is married. Chase is her next of kin. We have been trying to reach him for 2 hours. Where is he? Where is Chase? The name tasted like bile in my mouth. Chase was 35 years old, a man who called himself a visionary entrepreneur, but who I called a parasite. He had no job. He had no income. He had a vocabulary full of buzzwords like crypto and blockchain, but his wallet was full of my daughter's money. I had never liked him. I had seen the way he looked at Maya's bank account, not her eyes. But Maya loved him. She was blind to his faults, and I had kept my mouth shut to keep the peace. I pulled out my phone. I dialed Chase's number. Straight to voicemail. I dialed again. Voicemail. This was the man who lived in my daughter's house, drove my daughter's car, and spent my daughter's money. And when she was dying, he was a ghost. I turned to the nurse. "Keep trying him," I said. "I will find him." I opened Instagram. Maya had shown me how to use it to see pictures of my grandkids if I ever had them. She said, "Chase lived his life online, posting every meal, every outfit, every moment I searched for Chase's handle. Chasing success." And there he was. A live video had just started. The notification popped up at the top of the screen. "Chase is live." I tapped the screen. It was not a tech conference in San Francisco. Like he told Maya, it was not a meeting with investors. It was the interior of an Emirates first-class cabin. The camera panned around, showing the gold trim, the leather seats, the private suite. Chase was holding a flute of champagne, laughing at the camera. He was wearing a suit I knew. Maya had paid for. His teeth were bleached white, his smile arrogant. "Guess where we are going, guys?" he shouted over the hum of the engines. "Dubai, baby. We are going to close the deal of the century. Big moves only. No risk, no reward." And he wasn't alone. The camera swiveled to the seat next to him. A blonde girl, barely 22 years old, was leaning on his shoulder, giggling. She was wearing a Rolex. My daughter's Rolex. The one I gave Maya for her graduation. The girl blew a kiss to the camera. "Say hi, Bella," Chase said. "Hi, everyone," Bella squealed. "We are living the dream." I stared at the screen. The beep of Maya's heart monitor was the soundtrack to his laughter. He wasn't working. He was spending the money. I gave Maya for a down payment on a house he was flying to. He was flying. The most expensive city in the world, with a mistress, while his wife was bleeding internally. The comments on the video were scrolling by. "Looking good, bro. Crush it, king." I felt a rage so intense it threatened to stop my own heart. It was a cold rage, the kind of rage that built my company, the kind of rage that destroys everything in its path. Mr. Bennett, the surgeon, said urgently, "We need Chase. We cannot proceed with a high-risk procedure without spousal consent or a court order. We do not have time for a court order." I looked up from the phone. "Chase is unavailable," I said, my voice low and steady. "He is out of the country." "Then we have a problem," the surgeon said. "No," I said, stepping closer to him. "We do not have a problem. You have a solution. I am her father. I am the one paying for this hospital wing. I am the one who donated the MRI machine you used to scan her. Do you want to argue about paperwork, or do you want to save my daughter?" The surgeon looked at me. He saw the look in my eyes. He saw the man who used to break strikes. He saw the man who had nothing left to lose. He nodded. "Bring me the forms," I said. I signed my name, Langston Bennett. The ink was black and heavy. "Take her," I said. "Save her." They wheeled Maya away. The double doors swung shut, leaving me alone in the sterile hallway. The silence was deafening. I sat down on the hard plastic chair. I looked at the phone again. Chase was still live. He was showing off the caviar menu. He had no idea his wife was in surgery. He had no idea his life was about to end. I did not comment on the video. I did not call him to scream. That would be too easy. That would give him a chance to run. It would give him a chance to land in Dubai and transfer the money somewhere else. I needed him to feel safe. I needed him to land in that desert thinking he was a king. I opened my contacts and scrolled past the police, past the doctors, down to V. Vance, my lawyer. The man who buried the bodies, legally speaking. Vance was a shark in a three-piece suit. He had been with me since the 80s. He knew where every skeleton was buried because he had dug the graves. I typed a message. It was short. It was simple. Target is in Dubai. He is using Maya's accounts. Initiate the freeze. I want him stranded. I hit send. I watched the little gray tick turn blue. Then I texted my banker, a man named Sterling who managed my private wealth. Execute protocol. 0 on all subsidiary accounts linked to Maya Bennett. Authorization code LB74. Protocol 0. It was a fail-safe. I had set up years ago when Maya married Chase. I had structured her trust fund and her accounts so that technically they were subsidiaries of my holding company. She had access, but I retained administrative override. I had hoped I would never have to use it. I leaned back in the chair, closing my eyes, praying to a God I hadn't spoken to in years. "Please let her live," I whispered. "Let her live so she can see him fall." My phone buzzed. It was Vance. "On it. We are contacting the intermediary banks. We will flag the cards as stolen. He will land in about 8 hours. Perfect." Chase thought he was landing in paradise. He thought he was going to drive Ferraris and sleep in 7-star hotels. He didn't know he was landing in a cage. And I was holding the key. I watched the live video for a few more seconds. Chase was toasting the camera. "To freedom," he said, clinking glasses with Bella. I smiled. It was not a nice smile. "To freedom, Chase," I whispered. I took a screenshot of his face, a screenshot of the mistress, a screenshot of the caption. Then I put the phone away and waited. I had 8 hours until he landed. 8 hours to plan the rest of his destruction. 8 hours to make sure that when he stepped off that plane, he stepped into hell. The surgery was going to take 10 hours. I had time, I had resources, and I had a reason. I walked over to the vending machine, not because I was hungry, but because I needed to move. I bought a black coffee. It tasted like battery acid, but it was hot. I stood by the window looking out at the parking lot. Chase had been driving Maya's car. The car with the failed brakes, the car I had given them money to service just last month. Maya had told me Chase took it to the shop. I pulled out my phone again and dialed a number. It was a mechanic I knew. A man who used to service my fleet of trucks. A man who could look at a wreck and tell you exactly what happened. "Hey, Sal." "It is Langston," I said. "Langston." "Long time," Sal answered. "I need a favor, Sal. My daughter's car is at the impound lot. It was a brake failure. I need you to go look at it. I need you to tell me if the lines burst or if they were cut." Sal paused. "Cut, Langston." "Just check, Sal," I said. "And keep it quiet." I hung up. The suspicion was a dark seed in my gut. Chase was a thief. Chase was a cheater. But was he a killer? If he was, prison wasn't enough. If he had cut those lines, I would not just ruin him. I would erase him. I went back to the waiting room. The clock on the wall ticked slowly. Each second was a drop of blood. Each minute was a prayer. I sat there, an old man in a fishing vest, surrounded by the smell of antiseptic, plotting the downfall of a man halfway across the world. The game had started, and Chase didn't even know he was playing. The red light above the operating room doors was a steady, unblinking eye. It had been glowing for 40 minutes. 40 minutes of silence. 40 minutes of not knowing if my only child was still alive inside that room, or if I was already a grieving father. The hospital coffee in my hand had gone cold, but I did not put it down. I needed something to hold, something to crush. I sat in the corner of the waiting room, my back against the wall. Old habits from the trucking days. You never sit with your back to the door, and you never let anyone see you bleed. I was not bleeding on the outside, but inside. I was hemorrhaging. I pulled out my secure tablet. This was not the device I used for reading news or checking the weather. This was the device I used to run the empire I ostensibly retired from. It was encrypted, biometrically locked, and connected directly to a man who did not exist on any payroll. I opened a secure chat app and typed one word. Ghost. A moment later, a green dot appeared. "I am here, Langston. What do you need?" Ghost was a forensic accountant and cybersecurity expert I had hired 10 years ago to find a leak in my logistics chain. He had found the leak, plugged it, and then destroyed the man responsible. I paid him a retainer that could fund a small country solely for moments like this. "I need a full audit." I typed fast, my thumbs hitting the glass, hard. "Target is Chase Miller, my son-in-law. I need access to all joint accounts, all hidden accounts, and his digital footprint for the last 12 months. I need to know where the money went." There was a pause on the screen, then text appeared. "Give me 5 minutes." I looked up at the clock. 45 minutes in surgery. Chase had told Maya he was a crypto genius. He told her he was managing a hedge fund for digital assets. Maya believed him because she wanted to believe in her husband. She had handed over her life savings, the money I had given her for a down payment on a house in the suburbs. $500,000 I had warned her. I had told her that money talks, but wealth whispers, and Chase was screaming broke with every designer label he wore. But she said, "Daddy, you just don't understand the new economy." The tablet buzzed. "I am in Ghost," typed. Sending the file. Now I opened the document. It was a spreadsheet, a map of my daughter's financial ruin. I scanned the columns. The $500,000 was gone. It had been drained 6 months ago. Chase had told Maya it was locked in a long-term staking contract earning 12% interest. It was a lie. The money had been wire transferred to a shell company in the Cayman Islands registered under the name CM Ventures. From there, it was being siphoned back into a debit card Chase carried, a black card he used to pay for dinners, hotels, and gifts. I scrolled down to the transaction history. Tiffany & Co., $12,000. Not for Maya. Maya didn't wear jewelry. Victoria's Secret, $3,000. Maya was a size 4. The lingerie bought was a size 0. Porsche lease, $4,000 a month. For a car he told Maya was a company perk. He was not investing. He was looting. He was stripping my daughter of her future to fund his fantasy life with a 22-year-old mistress. But then I saw something that made the rage turn into a cold, hard knot in my stomach. Something worse than the theft. I switched tabs to the vehicle maintenance records. Ghost had pulled. Chase drove the new Porsche. Maya drove Chase's old sedan, a 5-year-old luxury car that required expensive upkeep. I looked at the bank withdrawals from the joint account. 6 months ago, withdrawal $2,000, memo car brakes and service. 3 months ago, withdrawal $1,500, memo tires and alignment. 2 weeks ago, withdrawal $3,000, memo full service and inspection. Maya had given him the money. She had trusted him to take her car to the shop to keep her safe on the road. I texted Ghost. Pull the service records for the sedan VAV-IN ending in 492. The reply came back in seconds. Langston, there are no service records. The car has not been to a mechanic in 2 years. The last oil change was 20,000 miles ago. I dropped the tablet onto the chair beside me. He didn't just steal the house money. He stole the safety money. He took the cash. Maya gave him to fix the brakes, and he put it in his pocket. He looked at his wife driving a death trap, and he calculated that a dinner at Nobu was worth more than her life. The accident wasn't an accident. It was a mathematical inevitability. And Chase was the mathematician. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the parking lot. The rain was starting to fall, blurring the lights. I saw Sal, the mechanic I had called, pulling his tow truck into the lot, heading for the impound area where Maya's car was. I didn't need Sal to tell me what happened anymore. I knew. The brakes failed because they were worn down to the metal. The tires blew because they were bald. Chase had murdered her by negligence. He had killed her. Slowly, transaction by transaction. I did not scream. I did not punch the wall. I went back to the chair and picked up the tablet. My face was stone. My eyes were dry. I typed to Ghost. Initiate the kill switch. Ghost replied. Define kill switch. I typed quickly, my fingers moving with the precision of a sniper. I want every account linked to Chase Miller frozen, contacting the banks now, flag them for fraud, flag them for money laundering, use the Patriot Act protocols. I want his credit score to hit 0 in the next 10 minutes. I want his passport flagged in the international database. I want every recurring payment canceled. And the Cayman account? Ghost asked. Drain it, I typed. Repatriate the funds to Maya's primary account. If he asks, say it was a glitch. Say it was a hack. I don't care. Just empty it. Done, Ghost typed. And Langston. Yes, I found his itinerary. He lands in Dubai in 20 minutes. He is booked at the Burj Al Arab, the Royal Suite. It is. Prepaid cancel it, I typed. Cancel the booking. Refund the card to the frozen account and call the hotel. Tell them the credit card used was stolen. Tell them the guest is an imposter. Understood, Ghost said, going dark. I closed the chat app. I sat there alone in the waiting room, holding the power of a god in my hands. Chase was 30,000 feet in the air, sipping champagne, thinking he was about to land in the lap of luxury. He didn't know that the ground beneath him had already been liquidated. I pulled up his Instagram feed again. The live stream had ended, but he had posted a story 10 minutes ago. It was a video of the clouds taken from the airplane window. The caption read, "Touchdown soon. Dubai isn't ready for us. Hashtag Empire. Hashtag Boss Life." I stared at the hashtag Empire. He thought he was building an empire. He didn't realize he was standing on a trap door, and I had just greased the hinges. The surgeon pushed through the double doors, wearing surgical greens that were darker in the center, wet with effort. He pulled his mask down. He looked tired. "Mr. Bennett." I stood up, my knees popping. "How is she?" I asked. "She is alive," the surgeon said. "It was touch and go. We had to remove a section of the skull to allow the brain to swell. She is in a coma. We induced it to let her heal. The next 48 hours are critical. If she wakes up, she has a long road, but she is alive." I let out a breath. I didn't know I was holding. "Thank you," I said. "Thank you." "Can we call her husband?" the surgeon asked. "He needs to be here." I looked at the doctor. I looked at the red light that had finally turned off. "Her husband is detained," I said. "He will not be coming." The doctor looked confused, but he didn't press. He had saved the life. He didn't need to save the marriage. I walked over to the vending machine and bought a bottle of water. I drank it in one long gulp, washing away the taste of the stale coffee. Then I sat back down and opened the tracking app on my tablet. Ghost had sent me a link. It was a live feed from the security cameras of the Burj Al Arab lobby. Ghost had access to everything. I watched the screen. The lobby was gold and marble, towering pillars and fountains that danced. It was a palace for kings and thieves. I saw the revolving doors spin. Chase walked in. He was wearing sunglasses inside. He had a Louis Vuitton bag slung over his shoulder. The blonde girl Bella was hanging off his arm, looking around with wide eyes, taking selfies. Chase walked up to the reception desk with the swagger of a man who owns the place. He slammed his black card onto the marble counter and leaned in, flashing a smile that he thought was charming. I zoomed in on the feed. I couldn't hear the audio, but I could read the body language. The receptionist typed on the computer. She frowned. She typed again. She picked up the phone. Chase tapped his fingers on the counter, impatient. He said something to Bella, laughing, pointing at the ceiling, probably bragging about the view. The receptionist put the phone down. She said, "Something to Chase." She handed the black card back to him, but she didn't give him a key card. Chase stopped laughing. He pushed the card back toward her. He gestured with his hands. The receptionist shook her head. She pointed to the computer screen. Chase pulled out another card, a blue one. He slid it over. The receptionist swiped it. She waited. She shook her head again. Declined. I watched Chase's face change. It went from arrogant to confused to angry. He pulled out his wallet. He started throwing cards on the counter. Platinum gold, corporate. One by one, they were swiped. One by one, they were rejected. Bella stopped taking selfies. She stepped back, looking embarrassed. The receptionist signaled to someone off screen. Two large men in dark suits appeared. Security. They stepped up to Chase. They weren't smiling. Chase was shouting now. I could see his mouth moving, shouting about mistakes, shouting about who he was, but he was nobody. He was a man with no money, in a foreign country, with a mistress he couldn't pay for, and a father-in-law who had just cut the strings. I watched as the security guards took his arm. Chase tried to pull away. The bag slipped from his shoulder. They began to escort him toward the door. Not the elevator to the suite, the front door, the exit. I sat in the hospital waiting room, 48 hours of hell ahead of me, waiting for my daughter to wake up. But for the first time since the phone rang this morning, I smiled. "Welcome to Dubai, Chase," I whispered at the screen. "I hope you like the heat." I sat in the plastic chair of the hospital waiting room, the smell of antiseptic and fear filling my lungs, but my mind was 4,000 miles away. My eyes were locked on the screen of my tablet, where Ghost had pulled up a high-definition feed from the security cameras of the Al Mahara restaurant inside the Burj Al Arab. This was not just a restaurant. It was an aquarium, a golden cage where the sharks swam behind the glass and the whales sat at the tables eating caviar. Chase was seated at the best table in the house, right next to the floor-to-ceiling tank. He looked like he belonged there, or at least he thought he did. He was wearing a white linen suit that he had probably charged to my daughter's credit card that morning. The blonde girl Bella was sitting across from him, looking bored, scrolling through her phone while Chase pontificated about business. I watched as the sommelier approached the table holding a bottle of wine like it was a newborn baby. It was a Chateau Petrus vintage, 1982. I knew the wine well. I had a case of it in my cellar back home. It cost $12,000 a bottle. Chase nodded vigorously, pretending to inspect the label. He didn't know. Wine from grape juice. He pointed to the glass, giving the go-ahead. The sommelier poured. Chase swirled it, sniffed it, and took a sip, making a show of closing his eyes in ecstasy. "It is exquisite," he said loud enough for the next table to hear. "We will take 2 bottles. 2 bottles. $24,000. For a lunch date." I looked up at the clock on the wall of the waiting room. It had been 2 hours since Maya went under the knife. 2 hours of hell for me. 2 hours of gluttony for him. I typed a message to Ghost. "Is the manager ready?" Ghost replied. "Omar is standing by. He knows what to do." Omar was the general manager of the restaurant. He was also the son of a man I had done business with in the 90s, shipping luxury cars from the port of Baltimore to the Emirates. I had saved his father's business from bankruptcy. Once favors in my world never expire. They just wait to be collected. I watched as the meal progressed. They ate lobster. They ate Wagyu beef. Chase was laughing, telling stories, using his hands, knocking back the wine like it was water. He was celebrating. He was celebrating the freedom he thought he had stolen. Then the bill came. The waiter placed the leather folder on the table. Chase didn't even look at the total. He just reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the black card. The heavy titanium American Express that belonged to my daughter, the one I had given her for emergencies. He slapped it onto the tray with the arrogance of a man who has never earned $1 in his life. "Put a 20% tip on there," he said, winking at Bella. "Big moves, baby." The waiter bowed and took the card. I leaned closer to the screen. My heart was beating a slow, steady rhythm. The trap was set. The waiter walked to the payment terminal. He swiped the card. He waited. He frowned. Swiped it again. He looked at the screen. Then he looked back at the table. He walked over to the maitre d' station and whispered something to a tall man in a sharp suit. That was Omar. Omar looked at the terminal, he looked at the card. Then he looked directly at the security camera, almost as if he knew I was watching. He nodded to the waiter and picked up the card. Omar walked toward the table. He didn't walk with the subservient shuffle of a service worker. He walked with the authority of an executioner. Chase was busy trying to take a selfie with Bella, leaning over the table to get the fish tank in the background. Sir, Omar said, his voice cutting through the ambient music. Chase looked up annoyed. What is it? Is the card run? I am in a hurry. There is a problem with the card. Sir, Omar said loud enough that the diners at the adjacent tables turned to look. It has been declined. Chase laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. That is impossible. It is a black card. It has no limit. Run it again. You probably have a connection issue. We have run it 3 times, sir. Omar said, his face a mask of stone. The bank has flagged the card. Code 0. Code 0. Chase frowned. What is Code 0? It means the card has been reported stolen. Sir, Omar said. The restaurant went silent. The clinking of silverware stopped. The chatter died down. Everyone was looking at the man in the white linen suit. Stolen Chase stood up, knocking his napkin onto the floor. Do you know who I am? I am Chase Miller. I am a tech mogul. This is my card. There is a mistake. Call the bank. I cannot call the bank, sir, Omar said, but I am required to do this. He pulled a pair of silver scissors from his pocket, and with a swift, decisive snap, he cut the black card in half. Chase's mouth dropped open. Bella gasped, pulling away from him as if he were contagious. You cannot do that, Chase screamed. That is my property. It is the property of the bank, sir, Omar said, dropping the pieces onto the white tablecloth. And now we have the issue of the bill. It is 32,000 dirhams, roughly $9,000. How would you like to settle this? Chase turned red. He dug into his wallet, pulling out a Visa Platinum. Use this one, he said, throwing it at Omar. It is my corporate card. Omar picked it up. He didn't even walk to the terminal. He pulled out a small handheld card reader from his pocket and inserted the chip. Beep declined. Chase was sweating now, dark patches forming under the arms of his expensive suit. Try this one. He pulled out a gold card, declined, and this one. A debit card, declined. One by one, he went through every piece of plastic in his wallet. Protocol 0 was absolute. I had frozen everything. The joint accounts, the business accounts, even the secret account in the Caymans, where he thought he had hidden the stolen money. It was all locked tight. Bella was looking at him with a mixture of confusion and disgust. Babe, she said, her voice whining. What is going on? You said you were liquid. You said we had millions. I do. Chase stammered. It is a glitch. The bank system must be down. It is a hack. I am being hacked. You are not being hacked, sir, Omar said coldly. You are broke. The word hung in the air. Broke. In Dubai, being broke is worse than being dead. It is a crime. I need you to pay the bill, sir, Omar said, or I will be forced to call the police. Theft of services is a serious offense in this country. You could go to prison. Prison. Chase looked around the restaurant looking for an exit, looking for a friend. But he had no friends. He only had an audience. Wait, he said, his hands shaking. He took off his watch, the gold Rolex Submariner, the one he wore in every Instagram photo, the one he told Maya cost $40,000. Here, he said, holding it out, this is a Rolex. It is worth 4 times the bill. Take it. Keep it as collateral. I will come back tomorrow with cash. Bella looked at the watch, then at Chase. Are you crazy? That is your favorite watch. I have to do this, babe, Chase said, trying to regain some dignity. It is just a misunderstanding. I will get it back. Omar took the watch. He held it up to the light, inspecting it closely. He took a jeweler's loupe from his pocket and put it to his eye. I watched on the screen, a small smile touching my lips. I knew something about that watch that Chase didn't. I knew it because I knew the man Chase bought it from. A shady dealer in the diamond district who sold replicas to wannabe rappers. Omar lowered the loupe. He looked at Chase with pure contempt. This is a fake, he announced, his voice booming. What? Chase shouted. No, it isn't. I paid 40 grand for that. You were robbed then, Omar said, tossing the watch onto the table. It clattered, sounding tinny and cheap. The movement is quartz. The bezel is painted brass. It is a knockoff. Sir, worth maybe $50 on Canal Street. Laughter rippled through the restaurant. The diners were enjoying the show, the rich tycoon exposed as a fraud. Bella stood up, grabbing her purse. "It is fake," she screeched. "You told me it was real. You told me everything was real. It is real." "Bella, listen to me," Chase pleaded, grabbing her arm. She shoved him away. "Don't touch me. You are a loser. Chase, a broke liar." She turned and walked out of the restaurant, her heels clicking fast, leaving him alone in the center of the room. Chase looked around, wild-eyed. I can fix this," he stammered to Omar. "Let me call my wife." "She will wire the money." "Your wife?" Omar asked. "The one whose card you tried to use. The one who reported it stolen." Chase froze. He realized the trap. He realized that Maya, or rather the person controlling Maya's accounts, knew exactly where he was. "Security," Omar snapped. Two large men appeared from the shadows. They grabbed Chase by the arms, lifting him off his feet. "Wait!" Chase screamed, kicking his legs. "My luggage, my hotel room." "You are not a guest here anymore, sir," Omar said. "You are a trespasser." They dragged him through the restaurant, past the tables of people filming him with their phones, past the fish tank where the sharks swam in circles. They dragged him out of the golden doors and threw him onto the hot pavement of the driveway. I switched the feed to the exterior camera. Chase was lying on the ground, his white suit stained with dirt. The sun was beating down on him, relentless and cruel. He patted his pockets, looking for his phone, looking for a lifeline, but there was no signal. I had suspended his service 5 minutes ago. He sat up, looking at the towering hotel that had just rejected him. He looked at the fake Rolex lying in the gutter where it had fallen from his pocket. He was stranded in the desert with no money, no woman, no status, and no way home. I sat back in the hospital chair, the cold coffee in my hand forgotten. The first domino had fallen. But I wasn't done with him yet. He still had hope. He still thought he could talk his way out of this. He thought he could call Maya and spin a story about being robbed. He didn't know that Maya was currently fighting for her life because of his negligence. He didn't know that the man holding the other end of the line wasn't his wife, but his executioner. I looked at the red light above the operating room. It was still on. "Hold on, baby girl," I whispered. "I am taking care of him." I picked up the tablet again. Phase 2, I typed to Ghost. "Let's see how he likes sleeping on a park bench in 100-degree heat." The walk from the restaurant to the hotel entrance was only a few hundred yards, but in the Dubai heat it was a death march. I watched on the tablet screen as Chase wiped sweat from his forehead with the sleeve of his white linen suit. The suit was already wilting, staining under the armpits, ruining the image of the jet-setting billionaire. He tried so hard to project. Bella trailed behind him, her phone in her hand, scrolling furiously, probably deleting the photos she had just posted, trying to scrub the embarrassment from her digital footprint. Chase stormed through the revolving doors of the Burj Al Arab lobby. He walked with a frantic energy, the kind of energy a man has when he is trying to outrun the truth. He marched past the fountains and the aquariums, ignoring the staff who bowed to him. He needed sanctuary. He needed to get behind the heavy door of the royal suite, where the world couldn't touch him, where he could pretend he was still a king. I watched him get into the gold-plated elevator. He jammed his keycard into the slot and pressed the button for the penthouse floor. Nothing happened. The button did not light up. He jammed the card in again, harder this time. He pressed the button repeatedly, his frustration mounting. "Stupid thing," he muttered. I could read his lips on the high-definition security feed. "This whole country is broken." He tried a third time. The elevator remained stationary. The other guests in the car stared at him in silence, judging the man in the dirty suit who could not make the machine work. Finally, he gave up. He got off at the mezzanine level and took the stairs, running up 2 flights to the reception desk dedicated to the VIP suites. I switched the camera feed to the desk view. Chase slammed his hand on the marble counter, scaring the receptionist, a young woman with perfect posture and a smile that did not waver. "My key is not working," Chase shouted, shoving the plastic card in her face. "I am in the royal suite. Fix it. I want to go to my room." "Want a shower and I want a bottle of your most expensive scotch sent up immediately." The receptionist took the card gently. She did not look rattled. She typed something into her computer. Her smile faded just a fraction, replacing warmth with professional coldness. "Mr. Miller," she said, her voice soft, but carrying clearly over the microphone. "One moment, please," she typed again. Then she looked up. "I am afraid I cannot reactivate this key. Mr. Miller, your reservation has been canceled." "Canceled." Chase laughed, a sound that bordered on hysteria. "You are crazy. I am prepaid. I booked it for a week. It is paid in full. It was paid in full." "Sir," the receptionist corrected, "but the primary cardholder, Ms. Maya Bennett, contacted our reservations department 10 minutes ago. She issued a chargeback request and canceled the booking immediately. Per our policy, when a booking is flagged for fraud or unauthorized use by the cardholder, we must terminate the stay, effective immediately." Chase froze. The name hit him like a physical blow. Maya, his wife. The woman he thought was too stupid to check the accounts. The woman he thought was sitting at home in the suburbs waiting for his call. "Maya did not do that," he stammered. "She would never do that. She doesn't even know I am here." The receptionist turned the monitor slightly so he could see. The screen showed a red banner across his file. "Booking terminated, fraud alert. Do not admit." "It seems she does know, sir," she said, "and she has requested a full refund which has been processed. The funds have been returned to the source account. The suite is no longer yours." Chase grabbed the edge of the counter, his knuckles turning white. "You cannot do this. My things are up there, my clothes, my laptop, my passport. You have to let me back in." "I cannot do that, sir," the receptionist said. "Security is already packing your belongings. They will be brought down to you shortly. You must vacate the premises." Chase looked at Bella. She was standing a few feet away, her arms crossed her face, twisted in a scowl. "Do something," she hissed. "You said you owned the company, Chase. You said you paid for this. I did pay for it," Chase yelled, turning back to the receptionist. "Listen to me. This is a mistake. My wife is confused. She is probably off her meds. I need to call her. Let me call her and straighten this out." He pulled his phone from his pocket. His hands were shaking so bad he almost dropped it. He dialed Maya's number. In the hospital waiting room 4,000 miles away, my pocket buzzed. I pulled out Maya's phone. It was cracked from the accident, the screen, a spider web of glass, but it still worked. The screen lit up with a photo of Chase, smiling, that winning smile that had fooled my daughter for 5 years. The caller ID read hubby with a heart emoji. I looked at the phone. I looked at the red light of the operating room where surgeons were currently sawing through my daughter's skull to save her life. Because this man had been too cheap to fix her brakes, I did not answer. I hit the silence button. I watched on the tablet as Chase listened to the ringing. He paced in a small circle in the lobby. "Pick up. Pick up. Pick up," he muttered. "Pick up, you stupid woman." I let it ring until it went to voicemail. Then he dialed again. This time I rejected the call, sending him straight to voicemail. I watched him scream at the phone. He looked like a madman shouting at a piece of glass in the middle of a 6-star hotel. "She is not answering," he yelled at Bella. "She is playing games." "Maybe she is busy," Bella said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Maybe she figured out you are a fraud." "I am not a fraud," Chase roared, causing a family of tourists to scatter. "I am a victim. I am being hacked. My accounts are frozen. My wife is acting crazy. This is a conspiracy." He turned back to the receptionist, his eyes wild. "I am not leaving," he declared. "I am staying right here until you let me back into my room. I have rights. I am an American citizen. I am a VIP. "Sir," the receptionist said, her hand moving under the desk, pressing the silent alarm. "You are disturbing the other guests. Please lower your voice." "I will not lower my voice," Chase screamed. "I want my room, I want my champagne, and I want to speak to your manager right now." "You have already spoken to the manager at the restaurant, sir," the receptionist said calmly, and he informed us of the incident with the counterfeit watch. "We do not tolerate that kind of behavior here." Counterfeit Chase's face turned purple. It was real. It was a gift. Security arrived then. Not the polite men in suits from the restaurant. These were the hotel's tactical team. Men who dealt with unruly oligarchs and drunk princes. They did not ask questions. They did not negotiate. 2 of them grabbed Chase by the elbows. He tried to shrug them off, but they held him in a vice grip. "Get your hands off me," he shouted, kicking out his legs. "I will sue you. I will buy this hotel and fire all of you." "Sir, you are trespassing," the lead guard said. "You have been asked to leave. If you do not comply, we will hand you over to the Dubai police, and I assure you their hospitality is not 5 stars." Chase went limp for a second, the fight draining out of him at the mention of the police. He knew he was on thin ice. He knew he had no money to pay a bribe or a lawyer. "Fine," he spat. "Release me. I am leaving. I don't want to stay in this dump anyway. It is tacky." The guards marched him toward the main entrance. Bella followed, keeping a distance of 5 feet, pretending she wasn't with him. They reached the revolving doors. The automatic glass spun, pushing them out into the blast furnace heat of the Dubai afternoon. The air conditioning cut off, instantly replaced by humidity that felt like a wet blanket. As they stumbled onto the driveway, a side door opened. A bellboy came out pushing a luggage cart. He did not handle the bags with the care usually reserved for Louis Vuitton. He picked up Chase's suitcases and threw them onto the concrete. The expensive leather skidded across the pavement, scuffing and tearing. One of the latches broke and the case popped open, spilling Chase's designer clothes onto the dirty ground. Silk shirts, linen trousers, and Italian loafers lay scattered in the dust. "Here are your belongings, sir," the bellboy said, turning his back and walking inside. Chase stared at his clothes. He fell to his knees, trying to gather them up, trying to stuff them back into the broken suitcase. "My suits," he whimpered. "These are custom. My shoes." Bella stood over him, watching him crawl on the ground. She wasn't helping. She was holding her own bag tight to her chest, looking at him with eyes that were cold and dead. "You said you were a millionaire," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the noise of the traffic. Chase looked up at her, sweat dripping from his nose, washing away the self-tanner he used. "Bella, baby, please," he begged, "helping me. It is just a misunderstanding. The bank accounts are frozen. It is a security protocol. It will be fixed in an hour. Just use your card to book us a room at the Hilton or something. I will pay you back double tomorrow." Bella laughed. It was a harsh, ugly sound. "You want me to pay?" she asked. "You brought me here, Chase. You promised me shopping. You promised me the world. You said you had a hedge fund. You said you were the next Elon Musk." "I am," Chase said, standing up, clutching a bundle of shirts to his chest. "I am a visionary, Bella. This is just a setback. Every genius has setbacks." "You are not a genius," Bella spat. "You are a broke loser who is stealing from his wife." She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. She opened the Uber app. "I am going to the airport," she said. "No." Chase grabbed her arm. "Don't leave me here. I have no money. I have no ride. My phone is at 3%. "Bella, please." She looked at his hand on her arm with pure revulsion. "Let go of me," she said, "or I will start screaming. And in this country, they take harassment very seriously." Chase let go his hand, dropping to his side. Bella tapped her phone, watching the little car icon approach. "You ruined my vacation," she said. "You wasted my time and you made me look like an idiot." She didn't wait for the car to pull up. She walked down the driveway toward the main road, her heels clicking on the pavement, leaving him behind. Chase stood there alone. The sun was beating down on him. The heat rising from the concrete was making the air shimmer. He looked at the hotel that had rejected him. He looked at the pile of clothes on the ground. He looked at his phone. He tried to dial Maya again. I watched the call come in on the shattered screen in my hand. I pressed the power button, holding it down until the screen went black. I turned off the phone. I turned off the tablet. Chase was 4,000 miles away, standing in a foreign land with no money, no shelter, no friends, and a phone that was about to die. He was a man who had built his life on other people's money, and now the credit limit had been reached. I leaned back in the hospital chair, closing my eyes. The first layer of skin had been peeled back. The arrogance was gone. Now came the desperation, and desperation makes men do foolish things. I took a sip of my water. It was warm, but it tasted like victory. "Phase 1, complete," I whispered. "Now we let him cook." The Uber driver pulled away, leaving Bella standing on the curb, her finger hovering over the cancel button. She had not gotten in. She was furious, but she was also stranded, just like him. Chase saw his opening. He scrambled up from the pavement, dusting off his ruined suit, and ran toward her, desperate to close the distance before she hailed another ride. "Bella, wait!" he panted, grabbing her arm again. She spun around, her eyes blazing behind her designer sunglasses. "Don't touch me," she hissed. "You are bad luck." Chase, you are a fraud. I am not a fraud, he pleaded, his voice cracking with panic. Listen to me. It is a banking error. A security freeze because I traveled internationally without notifying the private client desk. It happens to billionaires all the time. It is a safety measure. He was lying so fast he could barely keep up with his own words. But he knew Bella. He knew she was not the sharpest knife in the drawer. He knew she was greedy, and he knew she had a credit card with a $5,000 limit because he had helped her apply for it. Just listen, he said, smoothing back his sweaty hair. We cannot stay here. It is too hot. Let's go get a coffee. Just a coffee. Let me make some calls and sort this out. You don't want to leave Dubai without seeing the palm, do you? You don't want to leave without the shopping spree I promised. He dangled the carrot, the promise of future wealth. The illusion that this was just a temporary hiccup. Bella hesitated. She looked at the hotel that had rejected them. Then she looked at Chase. You buy me a coffee, she said. I left my wallet in the bags. Chase lied smoothly. You get the coffee. I will pay you back $10,000 for the inconvenience as soon as the freeze is lifted. $10,000 cash. Bella. For one coffee. Greed is a powerful drug. It makes people stupid. It makes them ignore the red flags waving right in their faces. Fine, she said. But if you don't fix this in an hour, I am leaving and I am taking your luggage. They walked down the road to a small, air-conditioned coffee shop in a strip mall miles away from the luxury of the Burj. It was a place for tourists on a budget and construction workers looking for a break. Chase walked in trying to maintain his swagger, but he looked like a shipwreck survivor. Bella ordered an iced latte. Chase asked for water, tap water because he couldn't even afford a bottle. They sat at a small, wobbly table. Chase pulled out his phone. It was at 3% battery. He needed a charger. He needed a miracle. Babe, do you have a charger? He asked. No, Bella said, sipping her latte, scrolling through Instagram, ignoring him. I need to use the bathroom, Chase said, standing up. I need to wash up. Watch my phone. I am expecting a call from my banker. He left the phone on the table face down. It was a calculated risk. He wanted her to see the phone to think he was important enough to receive urgent calls. But he forgot one thing. He forgot that paranoia makes people curious. I watched on the security feed of the coffee shop. Ghost had hacked into their system in seconds. The angle was perfect. I could see Bella's face. I could see the phone lying on the Formica table. Chase disappeared into the restroom. Bella stared at the phone. She took another sip of her drink. Then she reached out and flipped it over. The screen lit up with a notification. It wasn't from a banker. It wasn't from a business partner. It was a text message from a contact named Vinny Lone Shark. I zoomed in on the screen captured by the overhead camera. The resolution was grainy but readable. Text message read, You think you can run to Dubai? The interest just doubled. If I don't get my money by Friday, I am paying a visit to your wife. Bella froze. She read it again. Then another notification popped up, an email alert from a credit monitoring service. Alert. Credit score dropped to 350. Multiple accounts in default repossession order issued for Porsche, 911. Bella's eyes went wide. The illusion was shattering in real time. She unlocked the phone Chase's. Passcode was 1234 because he was arrogant and lazy. She opened his messages. She didn't find deals. She didn't find wire transfers. She found a thread with a man named Brad, his brother-in-law. Text read, Dude, Maya is going to kill me. I drained the house fund. I put it all on black and lost it. I need to borrow $5,000 just to make the minimum payment on the Amex. She scrolled up text. Read, I am going to find a rich girl in Dubai. Maybe I can con her into investing in a fake startup. I need a mark. A mark. Bella dropped the phone onto the table as if it were burning. She wasn't his girlfriend. She wasn't his partner. She was the mark. He had brought her here not to spoil her, but to use her, to drain her small credit limit and leave her stranded. I watched her face transform. It went from shock to anger to a cold digital vengeance. She reached into her purse and pulled out her own phone. She didn't call the police. She didn't call her mom. She opened TikTok. She set the phone up against the napkin. Holder framing the shot perfectly. She fixed her hair. She put on a sad, angry face, and she hit the live button. Hey guys, she said to her 50,000 followers. I know I posted about living the dream earlier, but I need to show you the reality. I am in Dubai with a guy who claimed to be a tech mogul. Turns out he is a broke scammer who is trying to steal my money. The viewer count spiked. Drama sells faster than success. Chase walked out of the bathroom. He had splashed water on his face and slicked back his hair, trying to look composed. He walked toward the table, smiling, confident that he could spin another lie. He didn't notice the phone propped up against the napkin holder. He didn't notice the red recording light. "Babe," he said, sitting down. "I just talked to the bank. It is all sorted. The funds will be released in an hour. We just need to—" "You are a liar," Bella said loudly, cutting him off. Chase blinked, confused. "What, you are a liar, Chase? You don't have a company. You don't have money. You have debt. You owe money to loan sharks. You stole from your wife, and you brought me here to scam me." Chase's face went pale. "Shh, lower. Your voice. People are staring." "Let them stare," Bella shouted. "I want them to stare. Say hi to the camera. Chase, you are live." Chase looked at the phone. He saw his own terrified face on the screen. He saw the comments rolling in. "Scammer loser, run girl. Turn it off," Chase hissed, reaching for the phone. "Turn it off, Bella." She snatched it away, holding it up high. "No, I want everyone to see who you really are. Tell them, Chase. Tell them how you asked me to pay for the hotel because your daddy cut you off. Tell them about the fake Rolex." Chase looked around the coffee shop. People were filming him now, laughing, pointing Bella. "Please," he whispered, the arrogance gone, replaced by pure, pathetic desperation. "I have nowhere to go. I have no money. My cards are locked. My wife isn't answering. I am stranded. Please, just help me. Help you." She laughed into the camera. "You called me a mark. Chase, I read your texts. You were going to use me." "I wasn't," he begged. "I swear I like you, Bella. I love you." "You love my credit card," she said, standing up. She grabbed her purse. She grabbed her coffee. "I am leaving, Chase, and you are staying here." "Wait." Chase stood up, grabbing the edge of the table. "Please, Bella. I need a ride. I need to get to the embassy. I need to get to the airport. Just give me cash. Give me $100. That is all I ask. $100 for a taxi. I will pay you back 1,000. The viewers went wild. He is begging for $100. Broke boy energy. Leave him there. Bella looked at him with disgust. "I wouldn't give you a penny if you were on fire," she said. She turned to the camera. "Guys, never trust a man who wears loafers without socks, and never trust a man who flies first class on his wife's dime." She ended the stream. She walked out of the coffee shop, head held high. She hailed a taxi that was waiting outside. She got in and drove away without looking. "Back!" Chase stood in the middle of the cheap cafe, his hands hanging by his sides. The barista yelled at him. "Sir, you cannot stand there. You must buy something or leave." Chase checked his pockets. He had nothing. The fake Rolex was gone. His wallet was full of useless plastic. His phone was dead. He walked out into the heat. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. It was a beautiful evening for the rich. For the poor, it was just another night of survival. He walked. He walked until his Italian leather shoes blistered his feet. He walked until the sweat dried on his skin, leaving salt stains on his suit. He found himself in a park near the beach. It was manicured, clean, and public. There were benches under the palm trees. He sat down. He was exhausted, hungry, and thirsty. He looked at the skyline. The Burj Khalifa pierced the clouds, a needle of light mocking him. He was supposed to be up there looking down on the world. Instead, he was down here looking up from the gutter. He lay down on the bench, curling into a ball, trying to preserve his body heat as the desert night turned cold. He closed his eyes, trying to sleep, trying to escape the nightmare he had created. But he forgot one thing. He forgot where he was. Dubai has strict laws. Vagrancy is not tolerated. Sleeping on a park bench is not just frowned upon, it is illegal. I sat in the hospital room 4,000 miles away, watching the GPS dot on my tablet. It had stopped moving. It was stationary in a public park. I picked up my phone. I dialed a number. It was not the police. It was a private security firm I used for my shipments in the region. "This is Bennett," I said. "Mr. Bennett, how can we help you?" "I have a security concern," I said. "There is a vagrant in Jumeirah Beach Park. He looks suspicious. He might be a danger to the public. I think the authorities should be notified." "Understood, sir. We will make the call." I hung up. I watched the dot. 10 minutes later, it started moving again. It was moving fast. It was moving. Toward the police station, Chase had wanted a free place to stay. He had wanted a room with security. He just got his wish. I closed the tablet. The battery was low, just like Chase's energy. I looked at the clock. The surgery was almost over. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the rain. "Sleep tight, Chase," I whispered. "Don't drop the soap." The cell in the Dubai police station was not built for comfort. It was built for containment. It smelled of unwashed bodies, stale tobacco, and the sharp, acrid scent of industrial cleaner that failed to mask the misery seeped into the concrete walls. I was not there physically, but I could imagine it perfectly. I had seen places like it before in my youth. Places where men were stripped of their names and reduced to numbers. Chase was sitting on a metal bench, his white linen suit now gray with grime and sweat. The air conditioning in the station was struggling against the desert heat, leaving the holding area humid and suffocating. He was surrounded by men who had actually committed crimes, pickpockets, drunks, laborers who had lost their visas. But Chase looked the worst of them all because he still had the stench of entitlement clinging to him. I sat in the hospital waiting room, the phone in my hand, waiting. It had been 2 hours since the security firm made the call, 2 hours since Chase had been picked up for vagrancy and public disturbance in a strict Islamic country. I knew the procedure. They would process him, take his fingerprints, mugshot, and then they would give him one chance to contact someone who could post bail or provide legal counsel. He had no money, he had no lawyer, and his mistress had abandoned him. The phone finally rang. It was a long international number. I looked at it for a moment, letting it ring, letting the fear build on the other end. Then I swiped the green button. "Hello," I said, my voice flat. "Dad." "Oh God. Dad, is that you?" It was Chase. He sounded small, broken. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a high-pitched panic that grated on my nerves. "Who is this?" I asked, playing the game. "It is Chase." "Dad, it is Chase. Listen, you have to help me. I am in trouble. Bad trouble." I leaned forward in the plastic chair, resting my elbows on my knees. "Chase," I said, checking my watch as if I had somewhere to be. "I thought you were in San Francisco at a tech conference. Why are you, calling me from a foreign number?" There was a pause, a hesitation, while his brain scrambled to construct a lie that fit his narrative. He was a drowning man trying to build a raft out of straw. I had to fly out last minute, Dad. An investor. Big opportunity in Dubai. The deal of the century. But it went wrong, Dad. It went so wrong I got mugged. They jumped me outside the hotel. They took everything. My wallet, my phone, my passport, my cards. I have nothing. They threw me in jail because I didn't have ID. You have to help me. You have to wire bail money. I need $5,000 fast. I listened to the lie. It was smooth, practiced. He didn't stutter. He didn't cry. He just lied with the ease of a man who had been doing it his whole life. He thought I was the same old man who sat on the porch and whittled wood. He thought I was the soft touch who wrote checks to keep his daughter happy. "You got mugged," I repeated slowly. "Yes, mugged. 3 guys. They had knives. It was terrifying. I am lucky to be alive. I just need to get out of here and come home to Maya. I miss her so much, Dad. I just want to see my wife." The mention of my daughter's name made the red haze of rage flare up behind my eyes. He dared to speak her name. He dared to use her as leverage while she lay 10 feet away from me with a hole in her skull. "That is terrible, Chase," I said, my voice devoid of sympathy. "And what about your business partner? Was he mugged too?" Chase paused. "Partner? I was alone. Dad, just me." "Really?" I said. "I thought you were with an associate, a blonde associate, very young, likes Rolexes." The silence on the line was heavy. It stretched across the ocean, across the time zones, loaded with the weight of his infidelity. Chase's breathing hitched. What are you talking about?" I stood up and walked to the window of the waiting room, staring out at the dark parking lot. The rain was still falling, washing away the sins of the city, but it couldn't wash away him. I saw the video. "Chase," I said. "What video?" he whispered. "The live stream." I said, The one Bella posted, the one where she called you a broke loser and left you in a coffee shop, the one where you begged her for $100, the one where you admitted you were scamming her. Chase made a noise like a wounded animal. No, no. Dad, that is not what it looks like. She is crazy. She is a stalker. I was trying to get away from her. Stop it, I barked. The command echoed in the empty waiting room, startling a sleeping nurse. Stop lying, Chase. The game is over. I saw the champagne. I saw the first-class seats. I saw you toast to the good life while spending my daughter's savings. Chase realized the lie wasn't working, so he switched tactics. He went for the emotional jugular. Okay, I messed up. I am sorry. I made a mistake, but I am still family. Dad, I am still Maya's husband. You cannot leave me here. These people are animals. I could die in here. You have to get me out for Maya. Do it for Maya. She needs me. I laughed. It was a dark, humorless sound that felt like gravel in my throat. She needs you, I asked. You think she needs you? Yes. She loves me. She will be devastated if something happens to me. Let me talk to her. Put her on the phone. I will explain everything to her. She will understand. She cannot talk to you, Chase, I said. Why is she mad? Is she crying? Tell her I am sorry. Tell her I love her. She cannot talk to you, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper because she is in a coma. The line went dead silent. No breath, no movement, just the static of the connection. What? Chase breathed. She is in a coma. Chase, she is in surgery right now. The doctors are trying to relieve the pressure on her brain because her skull was crushed in a car accident, an accident that happened because her brakes failed. The brakes you were supposed to fix. The brakes you stole the money for. No. Chase whimpered. No, that is not true. I fixed them. I have the records. Chase, I shouted, my control finally slipping just a fraction. I have the bank statements. I know you spent the mechanic money on bottle service. I know you spent the tire money on hotels. You killed her. Chase, you put her in that car knowing it was a death trap, and you flew to Dubai to cheat on her while she bled. There was sobbing on the other end now, ugly, terrified sobbing. It wasn't grief. It was the realization that his safety net was gone. Dad, please, he blubbered. I didn't mean to. I didn't know. Do not call me Dad, I hissed. I am not your father. I am your executioner. I took a deep breath, steadying my hands. Listen to me very carefully. Chase, you are in a cell in a country that does not tolerate debt or fraud. You have no money. Your passport is flagged. Your cards are dead. You are alone. Please, he begged. Mr. Bennett, please. Just a few thousand. Get me a lawyer. Get me a ticket home. I will fix it. I will pay you back. I swear. You cannot pay me back, I said. You took something that has no price. You took my daughter's safety. You took her trust. And now you want me to save you. I looked at the closed doors of the operating room. You said you were living the dream. Chase, I said, well, wake up. This is the reality. I am going to hang up now, I continued. No, wait, don't hang up. What do I do? What happens to me? I don't know, I said honestly, and I don't care. Maybe you will rot in there. Maybe they will deport you. Maybe you will have to beg on the street, but you will not be coming home to my daughter. You will not be stepping foot in my house ever again, Mr. Bennett. Please, Chase screamed, his voice tearing. Enjoy the heat, Chase, I said. I pulled the phone away from my ear. I heard him screaming my name, screaming for mercy, screaming like a man falling off a cliff. I pressed the red button. The call ended. The silence returned to the waiting room. It was a clean silence, a silence that felt like justice. I sat back down, my heart rate slowing. Chase was gone. He was thousands of miles away, locked in a box of his own making. He knew now. He knew that I knew everything. He knew that the old man he had underestimated was the architect of his destruction. I looked at the phone in my hand. It was just a piece of glass and metal, but it had just delivered a death sentence to his life as he knew it. I put the phone in my pocket and clasped my hands together. Now I wait, I whispered to the empty room. I had destroyed the monster. Now I just needed God to save my girl. The night dragged on. The rain stopped. The sun began to rise, painting the sky in shades of gray and pink, and still I waited. The anger kept me warm. The vengeance kept me focused. Chase was in a cell crying for a savior who wasn't coming, and I was sitting vigil praying for a miracle. The first battle was won. but the war for my daughter's life was still raging. 2 days. It took 48 hours for the Dubai police to process Chase for the vagrancy charge. 48 hours of him sitting in a holding cell that smelled of despair and unwashed bodies. 48 hours of him waiting for a savior who wasn't coming. I sat in the hospital room watching my daughter breathe. The ventilator clicked and hissed, a rhythmic reminder that she was still alive but fragile. Her face was pale, her head wrapped in bandages, but the swelling was going down. The doctors said she was stable but critical. They said the next step was waking up. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was time. I didn't want Chase in a Dubai prison. I wanted him here. I wanted him in the room when she woke up, not to comfort her but to face her. I wanted him to look at the damage he had caused. I wanted to see the light leave his eyes when he realized he had lost everything. I picked up the phone and called Vance. "Pay the fine," I said. "Get him out." Vance hesitated. "Langston, are you sure he is miserable there? If we leave him another week, he might crack." "He is already cracked," I said. "I don't want him broken by strangers." "Vance, I want to break him myself. I want him on American soil. Bring him home." Vance sighed. "Understood. I will wire the funds to the consulate to handle the fine and the travel arrangements." I smiled a cold, humorless smile looking at the rain streaking the hospital window. "I will handle the travel. I said I want to book this ticket myself." I opened my laptop. I didn't go to the airline concierge service. I didn't use my platinum status. I went to a discount travel aggregator, the kind that pieces together flights that no human being should ever take. I searched for the cheapest possible route from Dubai to New York. I found a masterpiece of misery. It was not a direct flight. A direct flight is 14 hours of comfort. This ticket was a 48-hour odyssey of endurance. Leg 1, Dubai to Mumbai on a budget carrier known for cramped seats and no air conditioning. Layover, 8 hours overnight in the terminal, no hotel included. Leg 2, Mumbai to Frankfurt in a middle seat near the lavatories. Layover 6 hours. Leg 3, Frankfurt to JFK on a cargo-heavy flight with non-reclining seats. Total cost $600. Total travel time 2 days. I booked it. I selected the middle seat for every leg sandwiched between occupied seats. I made sure to check the box for no meal service and no checked bags. Not that he had bags anyway. His Louis Vuitton luggage was likely being picked over by scavengers in the Dubai heat. I sent the e-ticket to the consulate officer who was handling his release with a specific instruction. Do not give him cash. Do not give him food. Hand him the boarding pass and put him on the bus to the airport. I imagined the look on his face when he walked out of the police station, blindingly hungry, thirsty, expecting a limousine, expecting me to have relented and sent a private jet. Instead, he would be handed a piece of paper and a bus token. The flight began. I tracked him on the airline app. Leg 1 departed on time. Chase was squeezed into row 42, seat E. I could picture him wearing that ruined white linen suit now stained with sweat and dirt from the jail floor. He would smell terrible. He would be dehydrated, and he would be surrounded by people who had paid for their tickets and didn't want to sit next to a vagrant. He landed in Mumbai. I watched the dot on the map. Pause. He had 8 hours to kill in an airport with no money. He couldn't buy a bottle of water. He couldn't buy a sandwich. He would have to drink from the bathroom tap and try to sleep on the hard plastic chairs of the waiting area while security guards poked him to keep moving. Then came the flight to Frankfurt. This was the long haul. 9 hours trapped in a metal tube. I hoped there was a crying baby. I hoped the person in front of him reclined their seat all the way back, crushing his knees. I hoped the person next to him wanted to talk. He was starving. By now, the airline would serve food to the other passengers, the smell of warm pasta and bread filling the cabin, but the flight attendant would look at her manifest, see the code for no meal, and walk right past him. Maybe he would beg. Maybe he would ask for a cracker. But knowing Chase, his pride was the only thing he had left, and he would choke on it before he asked for charity. He landed in Frankfurt exhausted, delirium setting in. He was probably hallucinating from low blood sugar, imagining the steak dinner he had eaten just 3 days ago, imagining the champagne he had toasted with. Finally, the last leg to New York, the home stretch. He probably thought the worst was over. He probably thought that once he landed on U.S. soil, he could charm his way through. He could call me. He could rush to the hospital and play the victim. He didn't know. I had made one last phone call. I had a contact in Customs and Border Protection, a man who owed me a favor from a shipping container incident years ago. I didn't ask him to break the law. I just asked him to be thorough. I sent an anonymous tip via an encrypted channel. Suspect traveling from Dubai via high-risk routes. Mumbai-Frankfurt displaying erratic behavior. Possible internal smuggling of contraband. Check him closely. When Chase's flight landed at JFK at 4 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, he was a wreck. He shuffled off the plane, his eyes red-rimmed, his lips cracked, his suit looking like a rag. He walked toward passport control thinking he was free. He scanned his passport. The machine beeped a loud red alert. "Please step aside, sir," an officer said, stepping out of the booth. Chase tried to argue. "I just want to go home. I am an American citizen." "Step aside, sir. Now." They took him to the secondary screening room, a windowless box with fluorescent lights that hummed. He sat there for 3 hours waiting. They didn't tell him why. They just let him sit, let him sweat, let the fear build. Then the interrogation began. "Why were you in Dubai? Why was your stay so short? Why do you have no luggage? Why do you smell like a prison cell? Are you carrying drugs? Did you swallow anything?" They stripped him. They searched him with a thoroughness that stripped away the last shred of his dignity. He stood there naked, shivering, humiliated, while strangers inspected every inch of his body, looking for something that wasn't there. They found nothing, of course. No drugs, no diamonds, just a broken man with an empty stomach. But the process took 5 hours. By the time they released him, it was 9 o'clock at night. He walked out of the terminal into the cool New York air. Dazed. He had no money for a taxi. He had no phone to call an Uber. He stood on the curb watching the cars go by, watching people hugging their families, watching the world spin on without him. He had to get to the hospital. He knew that was his only play. He had to get to Maya before I poisoned her against him. He had to spin the narrative. He had to tell her I had abandoned him, that I had set him up. He did something Chase Miller would never have done a week ago. He begged. He found a cab driver parked near the exit smoking a cigarette. He approached him, his hands shaking. "Please," Chase said, his voice raspy from dehydration. "Take me to Memorial Hospital. My wife is dying. I have no money, but my father-in-law is there. He is rich. He will pay you double. I swear. Just take me there." The driver looked at him, looked at the dirty suit, the desperate eyes. He probably saw a junkie. He probably saw a con artist. But maybe he saw a human being in pain. "Get in the driver," said grunting. "But if nobody pays, I am calling the cops." Chase climbed into the back seat, collapsing against the vinyl. It was the first soft thing he had touched in 2 days. He closed his eyes as the city lights blurred past him. He was rehearsing his lines. I could feel it. He was practicing the tears, practicing the outrage. He was going to burst into that hospital room and play the role of a lifetime. The grieving husband, a victim of a cruel father-in-law. The hero who survived an ordeal to be by his wife's side. I stood up in the hospital room and walked to the mirror in the small bathroom. I washed my face, I straightened my collar. I looked into my own eyes. I looked tired, but I looked ready. I walked back to Maya's bedside. I took her hand. It was warm. Her eyelids fluttered slightly. The doctor said she might wake up soon. I squeezed her hand. "He is coming, baby girl," I whispered. "He is coming to lie to you. But don't worry. I am here, and I am not going to let him say a word." I heard the elevator ding down the hall. I heard heavy footsteps running, frantic footsteps slapping against the tile floor. I heard the nurse's station gasp, asking someone to stop. Then the door to the room burst open. Chase stood there. He looked like a ghost. He looked like a corpse that had clawed its way out of the grave. His white suit was brown. His hair was matted. His face was gaunt with stubble and grime. He smelled of sweat and airplane, toilets and fear. He saw me standing by the bed. He saw Maya lying still, hooked up to the machines. He didn't attack me. He didn't scream. He fell to his knees, his hands grasping the doorframe for support. "Maya," he croaked, his voice a broken whisper. "Baby, I am here." He looked at me, tears streaming down his dirty face, cutting tracks through the grime. "Why did you do that to me?" he sobbed. "Why?" I looked at him with zero emotion. I looked at him like he was a bug I had just stepped on. "Because, Chase," I said, my voice calm and cold, You booked a first-class ticket to hell. I just upgraded you to the express lane. The automatic doors of the intensive care unit slid open with a soft hiss, breaking the rhythmic silence of the heart monitors. The smell hit me before he did. It was a pungent mix of stale sweat, unwashed clothes, and the distinct acrid scent of a man who has traveled through 3 continents in 48 hours without a shower. It was the smell of desperation. I was sitting in the corner of the room, the lights dimmed low so Maya could rest. The shadows wrapped around me like a cloak, making me invisible to anyone who wasn't looking for me. And Chase Miller was definitely not looking for me. He was looking for an audience. He burst into the room, his white linen suit now a stained gray rag hanging loosely off his frame. His hair was matted with grease and his eyes were wild red, rimmed and frantic. He looked like a man who had crawled out of a grave, but instead of humility, he wore a mask of performative grief. Maya, he choked out, rushing toward the bed where my daughter lay connected to a web of tubes and wires. He threw himself onto the side of the bed, gripping the rail with dirty fingernails, ignoring the sterile field, ignoring the nurses who gasped at his sudden intrusion. He reached out to touch her face, his hand trembling. "Baby, I am here," he sobbed loudly enough for the entire floor to hear. "I made it. I flew through the storm to get to you. I am so sorry I wasn't here when it happened. But I am here now. Daddy is here." I watched him from the darkness. My hands were folded in my lap, calm and still. Inside my chest, a volcano was erupting, but on the outside, I was ice. I watched him stroke her bandaged head. I watched him lean in close to her ear, whispering lies into the unconscious void. "You are going to be okay, baby," he wept. "I am going to take care of you. I promise I will never leave your side again. We will get through this. Just wake up so I can tell you how much I love you." It was a disgusting display. It was Oscar-worthy acting from a man who had spent the last week planning to leave her. He was not crying for her pain. He was crying because she was his bank account and the bank was currently closed. He buried his face in the sheets, his shoulders heaving with exaggerated sobs. I waited until the nurse took a step forward to remove him. Then I raised a hand, stopping her. I wanted to see how far he would go. I wanted to see the full extent of his depravity. I stood up slowly, my joints popping in the quiet room. "Are you done acting?" "Chase," I asked. My voice was low, a rumble of thunder that cut through his theatrical weeping. Chase froze. He lifted his head slowly, turning toward the corner where I stood. His eyes widened in shock. He hadn't seen me. He thought he was alone with his victim. "Dad," he stammered, wiping his nose on his sleeve. "I didn't see you. I came as soon as I heard. I came straight from the airport. I stepped into the light, looking down at him." He looked pathetic, cowering by the bed like a beaten dog, but I knew better. "Dogs are loyal. This was a leech you didn't, you. Come as soon as you heard," I said, walking closer until I could smell the stench radiating off him. "You came after you were kicked out of your hotel. You came after your credit cards were declined. You came after your mistress dumped you in a coffee shop." Chase stood up, backing away slightly, raising his hands in a gesture of surrender. "No, that is not true," he pleaded. "It was a misunderstanding. Dad, I was in Dubai for business. The deal went south. My partners, they turned on me. They robbed me. They took everything. My wallet, my phone, my passport. I was stranded. I had to beg for a ticket home, just to be here with her." He was lying so easily, the words tumbling out of his mouth like garbage spilling from a truck. "You were robbed," I repeated, my face stone. "Yes, robbed. At gunpoint. It was terrifying, but I didn't care about the money. I only cared about getting back to Maya. When I heard about the accident, I went crazy. I walked 10 miles to the embassy. I haven't eaten in 2 days, Dad. I haven't slept. I just haven't slept. I needed to see her." He reached out, trying to grab my hand, trying to forge a connection based on a shared lie. "You have to help me," he whispered. "I am a victim here too. Look at me. I have nothing." I looked at him. I looked at the suit. I had paid for the shoes. I had bought him the watch tan line on his wrist where the fake Rolex used to be. "You are right, Chase," I said. "You have nothing, but you were not robbed." I pulled my phone from my pocket and unlocked it. I held up the screen showing the screenshot I had taken 3 days ago, the one from the live stream. "I saw you, Chase," I said. "I saw the champagne. I saw the girl. I saw the caption. Living the dream." Chase stared at the image, his face draining of color. That was marketing," he stammered. "It was for the brand. I had to project success to close the deal. The girl was just an assistant. Dad, you don't understand how business works in the Middle East." "I understand business perfectly," I said, stepping closer, backing him against the wall. "I understand that. I understand. You took $500,000 of my daughter's savings and moved it to the Cayman Islands. I understand that you haven't serviced her car in 2 years pocketing the cash. Instead, I understand that you killed her. Chase, you cut the corners and she paid the price." Chase began to shake violently. The walls were closing in. The narrative he had constructed was crumbling brick by brick. "No, it was an accident." The mechanic said. "It was an accident. You cannot blame me for that." "I can, and I do," I said, "and I blame you for leaving her to die while you played playboy in the desert." Chase looked at Maya, then back at me, desperation clawing at his throat. He realized the sympathy card wasn't working. He realized I wasn't buying the victim act. So he switched to the only thing he had left: greed. He reached into the inside pocket of his ruined jacket. His hand came out holding a piece of paper. It was crumpled, stained with sweat, and folded into a tight square. "Listen, Dad," he said, his voice changing, becoming harder, faster. "We can fight about the past later. Right now we need to focus on her care. Look at her. She is in bad shape. This is going to be expensive. The surgery, the rehab, it will cost millions." "I have millions, Chase," I said coldly. "I don't need your help. But you shouldn't have to pay for it all," he said, unfolding the paper with trembling hands. "I have a plan. I thought ahead. I prepared for this." He smoothed the paper out on the bedside table next to Maya's unconscious hand. "This is an accelerated death benefit claim form," he said, pointing to the text. "It is a rider on her life insurance policy. I took it out last year just in case. If she is terminally ill or incapacitated, we can access the funds now. $5 million, Dad. It will cover everything. We just need a doctor's signature and yours as a witness, since she cannot sign." I stared at the paper. It was a claim form for a policy I didn't know existed, a policy he had taken out on her life, a policy that paid out if she died or was essentially dead. "You took out life insurance on her?" I asked, my voice quiet. "Yes, to protect us," Chase said, eager, now thinking he saw an opening. "It pays out $5 million. We can use it to get her the best care, and we can use some of it to get back on our feet to recover from the robbery in Dubai. It is what she would want. Dad, she would want us to be secure." I looked at the date on the form. It had been printed 3 days ago, the day of the accident, or maybe the day before. "You didn't print this today?" "Chase," I said. "You have been carrying this around. You had this in your pocket while you were on the plane. You had this in your pocket while you were drinking champagne." I just wanted to be prepared," he stammered, backing away again. "You weren't prepared to save her," I said. "You were prepared to cash her out." He wasn't here to comfort his wife. He was here to get a signature. He was broke, stranded and desperate, and he saw his dying wife not as a tragedy, but as an ATM machine. He wanted to liquidate her life to pay for his mistakes. The rage that had been simmering in my gut finally boiled over. It wasn't a hot, screaming rage. It was a cold, absolute finality. I reached out and snatched the paper from the table. "Hey, that is a legal document," Chase shouted, reaching for it. I ripped it in half. The sound was loud in the quiet room. Then I ripped it again and again, shredding the paper until it was nothing but confetti in my hands. "She is not dead, Chase," I said, throwing the pieces at his feet. "She is fighting. And as long as I have breath in my body, you will not see a dime of her money. You will not see a dime of her insurance. And you will not see her." Chase looked at the shredded paper on the floor, his eyes wide with horror. He fell to his knees trying to gather the pieces, trying to salvage his golden ticket. "No," he whimpered. "You can't do that. We need that money. I need that money. You need a lawyer," I said. I pressed the call button for the nurse hard. Chase looked up from the floor, tears streaming down his face. Genuine tears this time. Tears for his lost fortune. "Dad, please," he begged. "Don't kick me out. I have nowhere to go. I am hungry." I looked down at him, at the man who had promised to love and cherish my daughter. "You are not my son," I said. "And you are not her husband anymore. You are a stranger who broke into a hospital room." The door opened and 2 security guards stepped in. Burly men I had stationed outside an hour ago. "Mr. Bennett," one of them asked. "Remove him," I said, pointing at Chase. "He is trespassing, and he is disturbing the patient." The guards moved in, grabbing Chase by the arms, lifting him off the floor like a rag doll. "No, let me go," Chase screamed, kicking his legs. Maya, wake up. Tell them." "She can't hear you." "Chase," I said, walking to the door, holding it open. "She is dreaming of a better life, one that doesn't include you." They dragged him into the hallway, his screams echoing off the tiled walls, drawing stares from doctors and visitors. "I have rights," he yelled. "I am her husband." I watched them drag him toward the elevators, watched the doors close on his screaming face, silencing him. I stood there for a moment, breathing heavy, my heart pounding against my ribs. I walked back to the bed. I looked at the confetti of paper on the floor, the last remnants of his greed. I picked up the wastebasket and swept the pieces into it, every last scrap. Then I sat back down in the chair and took Maya's hand. It was still warm, still alive. "He is gone, baby girl," I whispered. "He is gone for good." I leaned back into the shadows, the guardian at the gate, ready for the next battle, because Chase was desperate, and desperate men always come back for more. The steady beep of the heart monitor was the only music I had heard for 3 days. It was a metronome, counting down the seconds of my life, waiting for my daughter to decide if she was going to stay in this world or leave it for the next. I sat by the bed holding a hand that felt too cold, too still, watching the rise and fall of her chest under the hospital gown. The doctors said the swelling was going down. They said her vitals were strong. But they didn't know. Maya, like I did, they didn't know that her spirit was tired, worn down by 5 years of marriage to a man who treated her heart like a rental car. Then it happened. A twitch. Not a spasm, but a deliberate movement of her index finger against my palm. I froze. I stopped breathing, afraid that if I moved I would scare the moment away. "Maya," I whispered, leaning close to her ear. "Baby girl, can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered. They were heavy, weighed down by the sedation and the trauma, but she fought. She opened them a crack, revealing the brown eyes that looked just like her mother's. They were unfocused at first, swimming in a haze of confusion. But then they found me. They locked onto my face, and I saw the recognition click into place. "Daddy," she croaked. Her voice was a dry rasp, barely audible over the hum of the machines. "I am here, baby," I said, squeezing her hand, tears finally spilling over. "I am right here. You are safe." She tried to smile, but the effort was too much. She looked around the room, her eyes darting to the door, to the empty chair beside me. She was looking for him. Even after everything, even after the neglect and the theft, part of her still expected her husband to be there, because that is who she was. Loyal to a fault. And as if summoned by the devil himself, the door swung open. It wasn't the nurses. It wasn't the doctors. It was Chase. He had managed to slip away from the guards in the hallway, probably using the chaos of the shift change. Or maybe he had just begged loud enough that someone took pity on him. He looked worse than before, if that was possible. His eyes were manic, his desperation vibrating off him in waves. He saw Maya's open eyes and he lunged forward. "Maya," he gasped, rushing to the other side of the bed before I could stand up. "You are awake. Oh, thank God you are awake." He grabbed her other hand, clutching it like a lifeline. Maya flinched, pulling back slightly, but she was too weak to fight him off. I stood up my chair, scraping loudly against the floor. "Get away from her." "Chase." Chase ignored me. He leaned in close to Maya, his face inches from hers, blocking my view. He wasn't looking at her with love. He was looking at her with an intensity that made my skin crawl. He was whispering something low and hurried. I moved around the bed, ready to throw him through the window. But Maya lifted her hand. She signaled for me to stop. She looked at Chase, her eyes clearing, the fog lifting. She wanted to hear him. She wanted to know. I stopped inches away, my fists clenched, listening. Chase was whispering fast, his breath hot on her face. "Listen to me, Maya," he hissed, his voice a venomous snake. "You need to tell your father to back off. You need to sign the transfer papers for the insurance money right now." Maya stared at him, confusion turning into horror. Chase, what? He squeezed her hand hard enough to leave a mark. Do not play dumb. Maya, I know about the money. I know you have access. I need 500,000 transferred to the Cayman account today. Or else what? Maya whispered, her voice trembling. Or else I release the photos. Chase smiled, a cruel, twisted expression that shattered the last remnant of the man she thought she married. The ones from our anniversary trip. The ones on the private island. You know which ones, I have them on my phone. Maya, if I don't get the money in an hour, I am posting them everywhere. Your patient's parents will see them. The medical board will see them. You will be ruined. You will never practice medicine again. I felt the blood drain from my face. Revenge, porn, the last weapon of a coward. He was threatening to strip her dignity, to destroy her career just to fund his escape. It was blackmail, pure and simple. I reached for him, ready to end his life right there in the ICU. That is enough, I roared. But Maya's voice stopped me. It wasn't a whisper anymore. It was steel. Let him go, Daddy. She looked at Chase. She didn't look scared. She didn't look ashamed. She looked at him with a clarity that only comes when you stare, death in the face, and realize the person holding your hand is the one who put you there. You want to post them? She asked, her voice gaining strength with every word. Chase blinked, surprised by her lack of fear. Yes, I will do it, Maya. I swear. Then do it, Maya said. She pulled her hand from his grip with a sudden surge of strength. Post them, Chase. Put them on the internet. Send them to the New York Times. I don't care. Chase recoiled as if she had slapped him. You don't care. You are a doctor. You have a reputation. My reputation is built on saving lives, Maya said coldly. Your reputation is built on spending my money. And guess what, Chase? I would rather be naked on the internet than be married to you for one more second. She took a breath, wincing from the pain in her head, but her eyes burned with a fire I hadn't seen in years. And you should know something else, she said, looking him dead in the eye. You think you are the only one with a backup plan? Chase frowned. What are you talking about? The night of the accident, Maya said. I wasn't just driving to the store. I was driving to my lawyer's office. Chase went pale. The color drained from his face, leaving him looking like a wax figure. I found the emails. Chase. Maya continued, relentless. I found the messages between you and Bella. I found the transaction records for the Cayman account. You thought I was stupid. You thought I was just the quiet wife who signed the checks. But I tracked it all. I saw the jewelry receipts. I saw the hotel bookings. I didn't. Chase stammered, backing away. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. Was you, Maya snapped. And before I got in the car, I uploaded everything to the cloud, every text, every bank transfer, every photo of you with her. It is all on a server, Chase. And I sent the access key to Daddy before I started the engine. She looked at me and I nodded, realizing what the notification on my secure server had been 3 days ago. I hadn't opened it yet, too focused on her surgery, but she had armed me. She had given me the nuclear launch codes before she even crashed. You didn't just break my heart, Chase, Maya said, tears finally falling, but they were tears of anger, not grief. You broke the law, and Daddy has the proof. Chase looked from her to me, his eyes darting around the room like a trapped rat. The leverage was gone. The threat was empty. He had brought a knife to a gunfight and realized too late that the gun was already pressed against his forehead. Maya, please, he whimpered, falling back on his knees, grabbing at the bedsheets. I didn't mean it. I was desperate. I love you, baby. I just needed a loan. We can fix this. Fix this. Maya laughed, a dry, harsh sound. You cut my brake lines, Chase. You tried to kill me. No, I swear I didn't. Get out, she screamed. The monitor spiked, her heart rate jumping alarmingly. Get out of my room. Get out of my life. I didn't need to be told twice. I grabbed Chase by the back of his dirty suit collar. My grip was iron. I lifted him up, dragging him away from the bed. You heard her, I growled. Chase flailed, clawing at my arm, trying to stay in the room, trying to stay in the only safe harbor he had left. Maya, help me. He is going to kill me. Maya turned her head away, looking out the window, refusing to watch him, refusing to acknowledge his existence. I dragged him to the door, throwing it open. The 2 security guards were running down the hall, alerted by the screaming. Get him out of here, I shouted, throwing Chase into their arms. He crashed into them, a tangle of limbs and dirty linen. Arrest him, I ordered. He just attempted extortion and blackmail inside a federal medical facility. Hold him until the police arrive. The guards pinned him to the floor, putting a knee in his back. Chase was screaming, sobbing, begging for mercy, begging for a lawyer, begging for anyone to listen. But no one was listening. I slammed the door shut, cutting off the noise. Silence returned to the room. The only sound was the beeping of the monitor, slowing down, returning to a steady rhythm. I turned back to the bed. Maya was looking at me, tears streaming down her face, washing away the grime of the accident. "Did you really send it to me?" I asked, walking over to her, stroking her hair. She nodded. "It is all there, Daddy. The whole file. I wanted to leave him. I was coming to you. I was finally coming home." I leaned down and kissed her forehead, feeling the warmth of her skin, the miracle of her life. "You are home, baby girl," I whispered. "You are home." She closed her eyes, exhausted, the fight draining out of her body, leaving her limp but free. "He can't hurt you anymore," I said, pulling the blanket up to her chin. "I promise you he will never hurt you again." I sat back in the chair and pulled out my phone. I saw the file she had sent. It was a zip folder titled Evidence. It was 5 gigabytes of data, 5 gigabytes of nails for Chase's coffin. I forwarded the file to Vance with a simple message: "Bury him." Then I sat and watched my daughter sleep for the first time in 5 years, knowing she was truly safe. The monster was gone, and the warrior had returned. The hospital security guards had thrown Chase onto the wet pavement outside the emergency room entrance like a bag of medical waste. He lay there for a moment in the rain, his white linen suit now a ruined gray skin clinging to his shivering body. He was banned from the hospital, banned from his wife, banned from the only source of money he had left. I watched him from the window of Maya's room on the 4th floor. I watched him stumble to his feet, wiping mud from his face. He looked up at the building, screaming something that the wind carried away. It was probably a threat, or maybe a plea. It didn't matter. No one was listening. He turned and began to walk. He had no money for a taxi. He had no friends to call. So he walked. It was a 10-mile trek from the city center to the exclusive suburb where my daughter lived, where Chase thought he lived. It took him 4 hours. I sat by Maya's bed, holding her hand while I monitored his progress on the security system of the house. I had installed cameras on every corner of the property years ago. Chase had always complained about them, saying they were an invasion of privacy. He didn't know that privacy is a privilege for those who have nothing to hide. When he finally arrived at the gates of the estate, it was past midnight. The rain had turned into a steady, cold drizzle. The house sat on a hill, a sprawling modern mansion of glass and steel that glowed warmly in the night. It looked like a sanctuary. It looked like home. Chase punched the code into the keypad at the gate. Access. Denied. The red light blinked. He punched it again, harder, frustrated. Access. Denied. He kicked the gate, rattling the heavy iron bars. Then he remembered the manual override key. He dug into his pocket, fishing out the key ring that still held the keys to the Porsche he no longer had and the house he was about to lose. He jammed the key into the pedestrian gate lock. It didn't turn. I had sent a locksmith to the property 3 hours ago while Chase was still walking. The locks had been rekeyed. The codes had been wiped. Chase screamed a sound of pure primal rage. He climbed the fence, tearing his suit on the spikes, dropping onto the manicured lawn on the other side. He ran up the driveway, his loafers slipping on the wet asphalt. He reached the front door, the massive oak double doors that he used to open to welcome his party guests. He tried his key again. Nothing. He pounded on the door. "Open up," he yelled. "Open the damn door. I know you are in there." The house was empty. I had sent the housekeeper away for the night, but the lights were on. Time to give the illusion of life, Chase thought. Maya was there, or maybe he thought I was there. He didn't realize he was fighting a ghost. He ran around to the back patio, trying the sliding glass doors. Locked. He tried the kitchen window. Locked. He picked up a heavy stone garden gnome, intending to smash the glass, but he stopped. He was a coward, and cowards fear consequences. He didn't want to break into his own house. He wanted to be let in. He wanted to maintain the illusion that he belonged there. He pulled out his phone. It was dead. He threw it onto the patio furniture. Then he saw the outdoor landline near the pool house, a relic I had insisted on keeping for emergencies. He ran to it, shivering violently. He dialed a number. I listened in on the security feed. He was calling a 24-hour locksmith. "Yes, this is an emergency," Chase shouted into the receiver. "I am locked out of my house. My wife changed the codes and I need to get in immediately. Address is 442 Skyline Drive. Name is Chase Miller. Yes, I have ID. Just get here now, I will pay you double. He had no money to pay anyone, but he was still operating on the currency of delusion. He thought that once he was inside, once he was surrounded by his things, he would figure it out. He would find a stash of cash. He would find a credit card. Maya had forgotten about. I let him make the call. Then I made a call of my own. Not to the locksmith, but to the precinct captain of the local police. A man named Miller, coincidentally no relation to Chase. A man who respected property rights and despised domestic disturbances. I sat back and watched the screen. 20 minutes later, a van pulled up to the gate. It was the locksmith. Chase ran down the driveway, waving his arms like a castaway signaling a plane. "Over here," he yelled. "Let me in." The locksmith got out of the van, looking skeptical. He saw a man in a filthy, torn suit smelling of the street claiming to own a $5 million estate. "You have proof of residence?" the locksmith asked, leaning against his van. "I told you my ID is inside," Chase lied. "I just got back from a business trip. My wife is having a mental breakdown and locked me out." "Just drill the lock, man. I will give you 500 cash as soon as we are inside." The locksmith hesitated. He looked at the house, then at Chase. Greed was warring with caution. Just as he reached for his tool bag, blue and red lights washed over the driveway. A police cruiser pulled up silent and ominous, followed by a second one. Chase froze. Officers stepped out, hands resting on their belts. "Is there a problem here?" the lead officer asked. "Yes," Chase said, stepping forward, trying to summon the last shreds of his arrogance. "This man is refusing to open my door. I am locked out and I want to get into my house." The officer looked at the locksmith, then at Chase. "Name," the officer asked Chase Miller. "This is my property." The officer pulled out a tablet, checking a file. "Chase Miller," he repeated slowly. "We received a call about a trespasser at this address." "Trespasser." Chase laughed, a high-pitched, hysterical sound. "I am not a trespasser. I live here. My clothes are in there. My life is in there. Ask anyone. Ask the neighbors." The officer looked at the file again. According to the deed, this property is owned by Bennett Holdings, LLC. "Is that correct?" Chase blinked. "Yes, that is my father-in-law's company, but it is my house. He bought it for us, for our wedding. It is mine." The officer shook his head. "Sir, according to the filing, Bennett Holdings, LLC has revoked tenancy for all occupants effective immediately. We have a signed order from the property manager stating that no unauthorized persons are allowed on the premises." "That is a lie," Chase screamed. "It is a lie. He can't just kick me out. I have tenants' rights. I have lived here for 5 years. You have to give me 30 days' notice, not when the occupancy agreement specifies it will." "Tenancy contingent on employment," the officer said calmly. "And according to this, you were terminated from your position at the company 3 days ago." "I was never employed by him," Chase spat. "Exactly," the officer said. "So you have no lease, you have no ownership, and you have no permission to be here." The officer stepped closer, towering over Chase. "You need to leave, Mr. Miller." "But my stuff." Chase pointed at the house. "My suits, my watches, my laptop. You can't keep my property. That is theft." The officer sighed. He walked back to the cruiser and opened the trunk. He pulled out a large, heavy-duty black trash bag. It was knotted at the top. Mr. Bennett anticipated. You might say that the officer said. He tossed the bag onto the wet driveway. It landed with a soft thud, splashing dirty water onto Chase's shoes. "What is this?" Chase whispered. The officer shrugged. "Your personal effects." "We did a walkthrough with Mr. Bennett's lawyer this afternoon. We collected everything that legally belongs to you, everything that was purchased with your own personal funds and not company assets or joint marital funds." Chase ripped the bag open. He reached in, expecting to find his Armani suits, his Italian leather jackets. He pulled out a pair of old sweatpants, a faded college hoodie, a pair of worn-out sneakers, and a stack of old video games. "That was it." "Where is the rest?" Chase screamed, pouring the bag out onto the pavement. "Where are my suits? Where is my jewelry?" The officer consulted his tablet again. According to the receipts provided by Mrs. Bennett, those items were purchased with funds from the Bennett Family Trust, technically making them property of the trust. Since you are not a beneficiary, you have no claim to them. This bag contains the items you brought into the marriage and the items you purchased with your own documented income, which according to tax records was 0 for the last 5 years. It was a total erasure. Everything he thought he owned, everything he used to define his identity, belonged to me. He was just a guest who had overstayed his welcome. "This is illegal," Chase shouted, throwing the sweatpants at the officer. "I am going to sue. I am going to burn this place down." The officer grabbed Chase's wrist, twisting it behind his back, pushing him against the hood of the cruiser. "That is a threat of arson," the officer said, tightening the handcuffs. "You are already trespassing, Mr. Miller. Do not add a felony to your night." "I am not going anywhere," Chase yelled, struggling. "I am staying right here." The officer spun him around. "You are. Leaving the owner has issued a criminal trespass warning. If you are seen on this property again, you will be arrested on site. Now pick up your trash and start walking." The officer uncuffed him and shoved him toward the gate. Chase stumbled, grabbing the black bag. He looked at the locksmith who was already packing up his van, shaking his head. He looked at the officers who stood with their arms crossed, blocking the path to the front door. He looked up at the house. The lights were still on, warm and inviting, mocking him from behind the glass. He could see the outline of the living room furniture, the furniture he had picked out, the furniture he would never sit on again. He was soaking wet, shivering and holding a bag of old clothes that smelled of mildew. He walked backwards down the driveway, his eyes locked on the house as if trying to memorize it. "Go on," the officer barked. "Move it." Chase turned and walked through the open gate back onto the dark street. Behind him, the heavy iron gates swung, shut with a final metallic clang. The electronic lock engaged with a buzz. He stood there on the curb under the streetlight. The rain was falling harder now, washing away the last traces of the man he used to be. He was Chase Miller, the visionary, the entrepreneur, the king of the castle. Now he was just a homeless man with a bag of laundry standing in the rain. I watched on the monitor as he trudged down the street, disappearing into the darkness. I picked up the phone and called the housekeeper who was staying at a hotel nearby. "You can go back in the morning." "Maria," I said, "clean the driveway. There is some trash out front." I hung up and turned back to my daughter. The castle was secure. The dragon had been slain, but the night was not over yet. Chase still had one place left to go, one place where he thought he still had power. He was wrong about that too. The rain had finally stopped, but the city streets were slick with oil and reflection. Chase Miller was walking with a limp. Now his expensive Italian loafers ruined by the trek from the suburbs, clutching a black trash bag filled with old sweatpants like it was the crown jewels. He had been kicked out of his hotel, he had been kicked out of his house, and he had been stripped of his dignity. But Chase was a cockroach, and cockroaches always think they can survive the nuclear winter. He wasn't heading for a shelter, he wasn't heading for a friend's couch. He was heading downtown to the financial district, to the gleaming glass tower that housed Miller Technologies. This was his last refuge, his fortress of solitude where he convinced the world he was the next Steve Jobs. I watched him on the city surveillance grid. Ghost had tapped into the traffic cameras tracking Chase's pathetic pilgrimage. I sat in the hospital room holding Maya's hand, waiting for the final shoe to drop. Chase thought he was a CEO. He thought he had an empire. But I knew the truth. Miller Technologies was a desk, a single rented desk in a co-working space on the 14th floor. He arrived at the building at 2 a.m. The lobby was lit up like a spaceship, security guards patrolling the marble floors. Chase walked up to the glass doors, expecting them to slide open. He pulled out his access card, the one hanging on a lanyard around his neck, the only piece of his costume he had left. He tapped it against the reader. Access denied. He tapped it again, harder. Access denied. He started pounding on the glass. "Hey, let me in. I am a tenant here. I have an office on the 14th floor. A security guard walked over. He wasn't the usual night watchman who slept at the desk. This was a private contractor, a man in a tactical vest with a sidearm. I had hired him personally, 6 hours ago. The guard opened the door. Just a crack, blocking the gap with his body. "Building is closed, sir," the guard said. "It is never closed," Chase shouted, pushing against the door. "It is 24-hour access. I pay $3,000 a month for a premium membership. Let me in. I need to get to my server room." "Server room?" I laughed softly in the quiet of the hospital room. Chase didn't have a server room. He had a laptop and a cloud subscription he hadn't paid in 2 months. "Sir," the guard said, stepping out onto the sidewalk, pushing Chase back. Your membership was revoked, effective close of business today. You have been evicted. Evicted. Chase dropped his trash bag. You can't evict me. I have a lease. I have investors coming tomorrow. You had a month-to-month rental agreement for a hot desk, the guard corrected him. And the new owner of the building has terminated all at will, contracts for non-payment and breach of conduct. New owner. Chase blinked, confused. What new owner? This building belongs to WeWork. It is a corporation. Not anymore, the guard said. The building was acquired this afternoon in a cash transaction by a holding company, Bennett Logistics Properties. Chase froze. The name hit him like a physical slap. Bennett. My name. My company. He looked up at the towering glass structure, 40 stories of steel and light, and realized for the first time the sheer scale of the enemy he had provoked. He bought the building, Chase whispered, horror dawning on him. He bought the whole damn building just to lock me out. He bought it because it was a good investment, the guard said dryly, and because he wanted to make sure the trash was taken out. Chase staggered back, looking at the skyscraper that was supposed to be his headquarters. He had brought investors here. He had walked them through the lobby, pointing at the architecture, claiming it was his vision, claiming he occupied the top 3 floors. Now he couldn't even get past the doormat. But my things, Chase stammered. My prototypes. My intellectual property. Your box is at the curb, the guard said, pointing to a small cardboard box sitting wet and lonely near the gutter. Chase ran over to it. He ripped it open, expecting to find hard drives, blueprints, secrets. He found a stapler, a coffee mug that said World's Best Boss, which he had bought for himself, and a stack of unpaid parking tickets. That was it. That was Miller Technologies. Where are the computers? Chase screamed, turning back to the guard. Where are the files? There were no computers, sir, the guard said, just a leased monitor that belongs to the co-working space. And as for files, the cleaning crew said the desk was empty except for empty energy drink cans. Chase fell to his knees on the sidewalk, clutching the mug. He had spent 5 years telling Maya he was building the future. He had spent 5 years taking her money to fund R&D, and there was no R&D. There was just a desk and a delusion. The guard wasn't done. He walked over to Chase, reaching into his vest pocket. Mr. Miller, he said, I have one more thing for you. He pulled out a thick envelope. It wasn't a bill. It was a legal packet bound with a heavy rubber band. R served, the guard said, dropping it onto Chase's chest. Chase looked at the envelope. It was from the district attorney's office focused on white-collar crime. What is this? Chase whispered, his hands trembling so hard he could barely tear the paper. Read it, the guard said. Mr. Bennett thought you should know exactly where you stand. Chase ripped the envelope open, pulling out the subpoena. He read the cover sheet, and his face went from pale to a sickly gray. It was a class-action lawsuit for investment fraud, but it wasn't from strangers. The plaintiffs listed were familiar names, very familiar: Samuel Vance, Arthur Brooks, Jeremiah Washington, Elias Thorne. These were not random investors. These were my friends, my golf buddies. The men I had played poker with for 30 years. The men Chase had met at my backyard barbecues. The men he had charmed with his buzzwords and his fake charts. He scammed them, I whispered to Maya, even though she couldn't hear me. He took money from Art Brooks, a man who ran the docks in Baltimore for 40 years, a man who breaks fingers for fun. Chase read the names and he started to hyperventilate. He knows them. Chase gasped. He knows all of them. They are his friends, the guard said, looming over him. You took $200,000 from Mr. Brooks. You took $150 from Mr. Vance. You told them you were building a crypto exchange. You told them the returns were guaranteed. Mr. Bennett found out about it this morning. He made some calls. He told them you were the one who lost their money. Chase scrambled backward on the pavement, crabs crawling away from the tide. He told Art Brooks. Chase squeaked, terror tightening his throat. Mr. Brooks was very disappointed, the guard said. He wanted to come down here personally to discuss his investment strategy, but Mr. Bennett convinced him to let the law handle it. For now. For now. The words hung in the air, heavy with threat. Chase knew who Art Brooks was. He knew the stories I had told about the old days on the docks. He knew that a lawsuit was the polite way of handling things. I didn't mean to steal it, Chase cried to the empty street. I was going to pay them back once the token launched. I just needed more time. You don't have time, the guard said. You have a court date, and you have a trespassing warning. The guard stepped back toward the glass doors. You should go, Mr. Miller, the guard said, looking at his watch. Mr. Brooks has a shift that ends in an hour. Sometimes he likes to drive by his investments just to check on them. Chase scrambled to his feet. He grabbed his trash bag of clothes. He left the cardboard box. He left the world's best boss mug in the gutter. He looked at the building one last time. The Bennett Logistics Properties sign wasn't up yet, but he could feel the weight of it. He realized then that he hadn't just married a girl with a rich dad. He had married into a fortress. He had tried to steal from a dragon's hoard while the dragon was sleeping, and now the dragon was awake, and he had bought the cave. Chase ran. He didn't walk. He ran down the street, his limp forgotten, fueled by the adrenaline of pure, unadulterated fear. He ran away from the financial district, away from the fantasy of his CEO life, running toward the shadows where he belonged. I watched him go on the monitor, a small, dark figure disappearing into the urban maze. I picked up the phone and dialed Art Brooks. He is running, Art, I said. Good. Art's voice rumbled on the other end. Gravel and smoke. Let him run. It makes the catch more fun. Don't touch him yet. Art, I said. Let the law sweat him first. I want him to stand in front of a judge. I want him to explain to a jury where your money went. All right, Langston, Art said. But if he walks, if the system fails him. He won't walk, I said, looking at my daughter's sleeping face. I promise you. Art, he won't walk. I hung up. Chase was out of options. He had no home, no office, no money, and now he had the sharks circling. He was running out of places to hide, but there was still one person. Left one loose end he thought he could tie. One person. He thought he could manipulate because she was young and scared Bella. He didn't know that Bella was already sitting in a police station with a detective pouring her heart out, because I had sent Vance to have a little chat with her. Chase was running toward a trap that had already snapped shut. I closed the laptop. The night was deep and quiet. The only sound was the steady, reliable beep of the heart monitor. You picked the wrong family, Chase, I whispered, and you picked the wrong city. This is my town. Rats always run back to the darkness when the light gets too bright, and Chase Miller was no exception. He had been evicted from his hotel, kicked out of his home, and barred from his office. He was wandering the streets of the city with a trash bag of dirty clothes and a stomach that was eating itself. He had no friends left. The investors he scammed were hunting him. My daughter had rejected him. I had destroyed him. But there was one person left. One person he thought was weak enough to manipulate one last time. Bella. He didn't know that Bella was currently sitting in a booth at a 24-hour diner 3 blocks from the bus station wearing a wire taped to her chest. He didn't know that 3 hours ago, my lawyer Vance had sat her down in an interrogation room and given her a choice. You can go to prison as an accomplice to fraud and conspiracy, Vance had told her, sliding a thick file across the metal table. Or you can help us nail the man who used you. Bella didn't hesitate. She was young. She was greedy, but she wasn't suicidal. She chose freedom. She chose to wear the microphone, and she chose to deliver the performance of her life. I sat in the unmarked surveillance van parked across the street from the diner. Vance was next to me wearing headphones. The audio feed was crystal clear, barely a crackle of static. I could hear Bella's breathing fast and shallow. She was terrified. "He is coming," Vance whispered, looking at the monitor. I looked at the screen. Chase was walking down the street. He looked like a shadow of a man. His limp was pronounced now. His head hung low. He was shivering in the night air, hugging his trash bag. He saw the diner sign flickering neon in the gloom, and he picked up his pace. He pushed open the door. The bell chimed, a cheerful sound that clashed with his appearance. He scanned the room. His eyes landed on Bella, and relief washed over his face. It was pathetic. He thought she was his savior. He slid into the booth opposite her. The smell of him filled the small space. Bella flinched. I heard her intake of breath over the audio feed, but she held her ground. "You came," Chase rasped, reaching for her hands across the table. "Oh God, Bella, thank you. I knew you wouldn't abandon me. I knew you still loved me." Bella pulled her hands away, resting them on her lap near the transmitter. "I am not here for love, Chase," she said, her voice trembling just enough to sound authentic. "I am here because you said you had a plan. You said on the phone you had a way to get money. I do, Chase said, his eyes darting around the diner checking for threats. He lowered his voice, leaning in close. I just need a place to stay for a few days. Bella. Just a couch. I need to clean up. I need to get a new phone. Once I am back on the grid, I can access the funds. What funds? Chase, Bella asked, looking him in the eye. Vance had coached her perfectly. Keep him talking. Make him specific. The insurance money, Chase whispered. The policy I told you about. The one on Maya. But she is alive, Bella said. You told me she was going to die. She is in a coma, Chase said dismissively. She is not going to wake up, Bella. And even if she does, she will be a vegetable. The policy has a clause. It pays out for critical injury. It pays out $5 million. I just need to file the claim. I just need a lawyer to force her father to sign it. Bella took a sip of her water. Her hand was shaking. But how do you know she won't wake up, Chase? Bella asked. This is the pivot point, the moment where we push him off the ledge. How can you be so sure it is that bad? Chase leaned back, a look of arrogant pride crossing his dirty face. Because I made sure of it. Bella froze. What do you mean you made sure of it? Chase looked around again, checking the waitress who was pouring coffee 3 tables away. He lowered his voice to a conspiratorial hiss. The car, Bella. The brakes. They didn't just fail. I listened in the van, my hands clenching into fists so tight my knuckles turned white. This was it. The confession. I had suspected the truth, had felt in my gut. You cut them, Bella whispered, her voice barely audible. Chase nodded, a small jerky movement. I didn't mean to kill her, Bella. I swear. He leaned in, his eyes wide, begging for understanding. I just wanted her to crash. I wanted her to get hurt, just a little. A broken leg, maybe a concussion. Something that would put her in the hospital for a few weeks. Something that would trigger the medical payout clause without killing the golden goose. I needed the cash, Bella. The investors were breathing down my neck. I needed the $5 million to pay them off and take you to Dubai. I just wanted her to get hurt a little. The words hung in the air, heavy and poisonous. He had engineered a car crash. He had calculated the physics of my daughter's pain, purely for profit. He had risked her life for a payday. But you cut the line, Bella pressed, pushing for the nail in the coffin. I just loosened the bleeder valve, Chase said, explaining it like a mechanic. Explaining an oil change. I thought the fluid would leak out slowly. I thought she would notice the pedal getting soft and just run off the road into a ditch. I didn't know she would be on the highway. I didn't know she would be doing 60. It was supposed to be a fender bender, Bella. It was supposed to be an insurance scam, not a murder. There it was, the admission of guilt, the intent, the method, the motive. In the van, Vance looked at me and nodded. We have it. Langston, that is conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and reckless endangerment. He is done. I keyed the microphone, speaking to the team. Move in. Inside the diner, Bella looked at Chase with a mixture of horror and revulsion. She wasn't acting anymore. She was looking at a monster. You are sick, she whispered. You tried to kill your wife for money. It was for us, Chase hissed, reaching for her hand again. Don't you get it? I did it for us, so we could be free. You did it for yourself, Bella said, standing up, sliding out of the booth. Chase looked confused. Where are you going? Sit down. We need to figure out where I am sleeping. I am going home, Chase, Bella said, backing away. And you are going to jail. Chase blinked. Jail? What are you talking about? He looked at her chest. He saw the small square outline of the wire beneath her blouse. The realization hit him like a physical blow. You set me up, he screamed. Standing up, knocking the table over. Coffee cups shattered on the floor, sugar packets flying everywhere. You set me up. He lunged for her, desperate to silence her, desperate to run, but the diner door burst open. Police freeze. Get on the ground. 4 officers in tactical gear swarmed the room, guns drawn. Their voices were loud, authoritative, shattering the quiet of the night. Chase looked at the front door, then he looked at the back exit where 2 more officers were entering. He was surrounded. He looked at Bella, who was standing behind a police officer, tears streaming down her face. Bella, he screamed. You promised. Get on the ground, now! An officer grabbed Chase by the shoulder, spinning him around. Chase swung wild, a desperate punch that hit nothing but air. The officer swept his legs and Chase hit the floor hard, his face smashing into the linoleum and the spilled coffee. They were on him in seconds, cuffs clicking shut, pulling his arms behind his back painfully. I didn't mean to. Chase was screaming, his face pressed against the floor. It was an accident. I just wanted the money. I didn't mean to kill her. You have the right to remain silent, the officer recited, dragging him to his feet. Chase looked up, and through the window of the diner he saw me. I had stepped out of the van, standing under the street lamp. The rain had started again, a light mist that made the neon signs glow. He saw me watching him. "Langston," he screamed, struggling against the officers. "Langston, help me. It was a mistake. I can explain." I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just watched. They dragged him out of the diner, kicking and screaming. He looked like a wild animal caught in a trap, thrashing against the inevitable. Bella walked out behind them, shaking. Vance put a coat around her shoulders, leading her to a patrol car. "You did good, kid," Vance said. She looked at me, and I nodded. It was the only thanks she would get. Chase was shoved into the back of a cruiser. He pressed his face against the glass, looking at me one last time. His eyes were wide, filled with the terror of a man who realizes he has fallen off the edge of the world. I walked over to the car. I signaled the officer to roll down the window. Chase stopped screaming. He looked at me, hope flickering in his eyes, a delusional hope that I might save him. "Dad," he whispered. I leaned down close to the window so only he could hear me. "You wanted a payout, Chase," I said. "You wanted $5 million for hurting my daughter." He nodded frantically, tears mixing with the grime on his face. "Well, here is your payout," I said. I pulled a $1 bill from my pocket, a crisp $1 bill. I crumpled it up and tossed it through the bars of the window. It landed on his lap. "Don't spend it all in the commissary," I said. "Roll it up, officer." The window slid up, cutting off his sobbing. The cruiser pulled away, lights flashing, disappearing into the rainy night, taking the trash with it. I stood on the sidewalk watching them go. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. But it was a good exhaustion, the kind you feel after a hard day's work, after building something that will last. I had dismantled his life piece by piece. I had taken his money, his home, his reputation, and his freedom. And now I had the truth. I turned to Vance. "Is it enough?" I asked. Vance smiled, a shark smile. "It is enough to put him away for 25 years, Langston. With the confession and the financial records, he will never see the outside of a cell again." "Good," I said. I looked up at the sky. The rain was stopping. The clouds were breaking, revealing a sliver of the moon. I took a deep breath. "Let's go back to the hospital, Vance. I said my daughter is going to wake up soon, and I have some good news to tell her." The raid happened at 3 in the morning under a sky that had finally stopped raining, leaving the city slick and black like an oil slick. The apartment was not in Chase's name, of course. It was leased under a shell corporation, the same one he had used to funnel my daughter's savings to the Cayman Islands. It was a penthouse in the trendy district, a bachelor pad filled with chrome and leather, the kind of place a man keeps when he wants to live a double life. I stood on the sidewalk next to the unmarked command van watching the tactical team breach the door. They didn't knock. They didn't ring the bell. They used a battering ram. The sound of the wood splintering echoed down the empty street, a crack of thunder that signaled the end of Chase Miller's secrets. Chase was already in custody, handcuffed in the back of a squad car. But the lead detective, a man named Miller, no relation, wanted him present for the search. He wanted Chase to see his sanctuary torn apart. He wanted to rattle him to break him before the interrogation room. They dragged Chase out of the car. He was still wearing the ruined white suit from Dubai, now stained with coffee from the diner floor and mud from the street. He looked like a ghost, shuffling in his shackles, his eyes darting around wildly, trying to find an escape route that didn't exist. They marched him into the lobby and up the elevator. I followed, a silent shadow trailing the procession. I didn't say a word. I just watched. When we entered the apartment, it smelled of expensive cologne and stale ambition. The walls were lined with art that looked valuable but was likely fake, just like the man who bought it. The police were already tearing the place apart. They were ripping the cushions off the designer sofa, pulling the drawers out of the mahogany desk, and smashing the drywall looking for the hidden safe. Chase stood in the center of the room, held upright by two officers. He was trembling. "You can't do this," he stammered. "This is illegal. I don't live here. This isn't my place." "Save it," the detective said, walking over to a large abstract painting on the far wall. He felt along the frame, his fingers searching for a latch. "Got it." He pulled the painting away, revealing a wall safe. It wasn't a small hotel safe. It was a heavy-duty steel vault installed directly into the studs. "Open it," the detective commanded, turning to Chase. "I don't know the combination." Chase lied, sweat dripping from his nose. "I told you, I don't live here." The detective didn't argue. He nodded to a technician standing by with a drill and a bore scope. "Drill it." The sound of the drill biting into the steel was shrill and painful. Chase winced as if they were drilling into his own teeth. He watched the metal shavings fall onto the expensive rug. He knew what was inside. He knew that once that door opened, his life was over. It took 10 minutes. When the lock finally clicked and the heavy door swung open, the silence in the room was deafening. The detective reached in. He pulled out stacks of cash strapped with rubber bands. $50,000 here, $20,000 there. It was the money he had stolen from the investors, the money he claimed he had lost in the market. Well, the detective said, tossing a bundle of hundreds onto the coffee table. "Looks like the market rallied." Chase stared at the money, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. "That is my savings," he whispered. "I withdrew it for emergencies." "Emergencies," the detective laughed. "You withdrew it to hide it from the IRS and your wife." But the money was the least of his problems. The detective reached back into the safe. He pulled out a black leather notebook. It wasn't digital, it was analog. An old-school diary, the kind a narcissist keeps to record his own genius because he thinks he is too smart to get caught. Chase let out a strangled cry when he saw the book. "No, you can't read that. That is personal property. That is attorney-client privilege. You are not a lawyer." "Chase," the detective said, opening the book, "and this is evidence." The detective started to read quietly at first, scanning the pages. Then his face changed. The cynical smirk of a veteran cop vanished, replaced by a look of pure disgust. He looked up at Chase, then at me standing in the doorway. "Mr. Bennett," the detective said, his voice hard. "You need to hear this." He began to read aloud. October 12th. The entry read, "She is taking too long to die. The arsenic isn't working fast enough. I tried increasing the dosage in her morning coffee, but she just gets sick. She throws up and then she recovers. I need something faster. I need something immediate. The Dubai deal is closing in 2 weeks, and I need the insurance payout to buy in." The room went cold, colder than the grave. It wasn't just greed anymore. It was premeditated, calculated murder. He had been poisoning my daughter. He had been slipping death into her breakfast cup by cup, watching her get sick, holding her hair back while she vomited, playing the concerned husband while he killed her by inches. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands clenched into fists so tight my nails cut into my palms. He hadn't just cut the brakes. He had tried to poison her first, and when that was too slow, he decided to smash her car into a guardrail. The detective turned the page. October 14th. The entry continued. "The brakes are the better option. I researched the safety rating of her sedan. If she hits a solid object at 60 miles an hour, the fatality rate is 80%. I can loosen the line just enough so it holds until she gets on the highway. It looks like mechanical failure. No autopsy, no toxicology report. Just a tragic accident, and $5 million in my pocket by the end of the month." Chase was shaking his head violently, tears streaming down his grime-streaked face. "It was just a fantasy," he screamed. "It was creative writing. I never did it. I never gave her poison. It is just a story." The detective reached into the safe one last time. He pulled out a small glass vial. It was half empty. The label had been peeled off, but there was a skull and crossbones warning etched into the glass. "Creative writing?" the detective asked, holding up the vial. "We will let the lab boys test this, but I am willing to bet my pension. It is arsenic." Chase collapsed. His legs gave out and he fell to his floor, held up only by the handcuffs and the officers gripping his arms. He was sobbing now, ugly, guttural sounds of a man who sees the needle entering his arm. "You monster," I whispered. The word barely escaped my lips. I walked over to him. I stood over him, looking down at the top of his head. "You poisoned her," I said. My voice was shaking, not with fear, but with a rage so ancient it felt like it came from the earth itself. "You watched her get sick, and you complained that she wasn't dying fast enough." Chase looked up at me. His eyes were wide, filled with terror. He saw the look on my face. He saw that if the police weren't there, I would have killed him with my bare hands. I didn't mean to hurt her. He blubbered. "I just needed the money. Dad, I was in debt. The loan sharks were going to kill me. I had no choice." "You always have a choice, Chase," I said. "You chose money over her life." The detective closed the book. He put the vial into an evidence bag. "Get him up," the detective ordered. The officers hauled Chase to his feet. He was dead weight, limp and pathetic. "Take him downtown. Book him for attempted murder, grand larceny, insurance fraud, and whatever else you can find. I want this man buried under the jail." They started to drag him toward the door. Chase dug his heels into the carpet, fighting for one last second of freedom. "No," he screamed. "Wait, I can make a deal. I can give you names. I can give you the investors." "We have the investors," Chase the detective said. "They are the ones suing you." They dragged him past me. I didn't move, I didn't flinch, I just watched him. As he passed me, Chase lunged, trying to headbutt me, trying to bite me, trying to do anything to hurt the man who had exposed him. "You did this," he screamed, spittle flying from his mouth, landing on my jacket. "You set me up. You planted that book. You put the poison there. You are the devil, Langston. You are the devil." I looked at him calm and cold. "I am not the devil." "Chase," I said, "I am just the father you shouldn't have messed with," he screamed again, a raw animal sound as they shoved him into the elevator. The doors closed, cutting off his voice, leaving only the echo of his hate in the hallway. I stood in the ruined apartment, surrounded by the debris of his lies, the money on the table, the hole in the wall, the diary that detailed the murder of my child. I felt sick. I felt a nausea that had nothing to do with the smell of the room. He had been so close. He had been living in my house, eating at my table, plotting to kill the thing I loved most in the world. The detective walked over to me. He looked shaken. "Mr. Bennett," he said quietly, "we have enough here to put him away for life. The arsenic, the diary, the brake lines. It is a death penalty case in some states." "Good," I said. I walked to the window, looking down at the street below. The squad car was pulling away, lights flashing, taking Chase Miller to a cage where he belonged. I watched until the taillights disappeared around the corner. Then I turned back to the detective. "Do me a favor, detective," I said. "Anything. Mr. Bennett, burn this book," I said, pointing to the diary. "After the trial, after he is convicted, burn it. Don't let my daughter see it. Don't let her know he tried to poison her. She knows about the car. She doesn't need to know about the coffee." The detective nodded, putting the book into an evidence bag. "She will never see it, sir. I promise." I nodded. Straightening my jacket, I walked out of the apartment, leaving the door open behind me, leaving the wreckage of Chase's life for the police to sift through. I stepped into the elevator alone. I pressed the button for the lobby. The descent was smooth quiet. I closed my eyes, leaning my head against the cool metal wall. It was over. The monster was caught. The threat was neutralized. But as I walked out into the cool night air, I didn't feel triumph. I felt a heavy sadness, a grief for the innocence my daughter had lost. But she was alive, and as long as she was alive, we could rebuild. I got into my car and told the driver to take me back to the hospital. I had to be there when she woke up properly. I had to be the first face she saw. The face of love, not the face of the man who tried to kill her. The night was ending. The sun was starting to crest over the city skyline, painting the buildings in gold. It was a new day, and Chase Miller wouldn't see the sun for a very long time. The courtroom was a theater of cruelty, and I had the front row seat. The air conditioning was humming, trying to cool down the heat of the bodies packed into the gallery, but it couldn't cool down the rage that was simmering in my veins. I sat behind the prosecutor's table, my hands resting on the head of my cane, watching the back of Chase Miller's head. He was not wearing the white linen suit from Dubai anymore that had been seized as evidence stained with the mud of his downfall. Today he was wearing a cheap gray suit provided by the state. It was ill-fitting, the sleeves too short, exposing his wrists, the fabric synthetic and shiny under the fluorescent lights. He sat next to his public defender, a man named Finch who looked like he had slept in his car and shaved with a dull razor. Finch was young, hungry, and desperate to make a name for himself. He knew the evidence against Chase was a mountain of granite, but he had decided to try and tunnel through it with a spoon. He stood up to address the jury, pacing back and forth like a caged animal, trying to distract them from the monster sitting at the defense table. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Finch began, his voice loud and theatrical. "My client, Chase Miller, is not a murderer. He is not a monster. He is a husband, a grieving husband who has been targeted by a powerful, vindictive father-in-law." He pointed a finger at me. "Langston, Bennett is a man of immense wealth and influence," Finch continued. "He controls this city. He controls the police, and he controls the narrative. He hated my client from the day he married his daughter. He wanted him out. And when a tragic accident occurred, he saw an opportunity. He used his money to frame a broke man, to plant evidence to twist the truth. I didn't flinch. I didn't blink. I let him speak. I let him weave his fairy tale, because I knew that fairy tales always end when the lights come on." Finch walked over to the jury box, leaning in close, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper, and let us talk about the victim, Maya Bennett. "The prosecution wants you to believe she was a happy, healthy woman who was sabotaged, but the medical records tell a different story. Maya had a history of anxiety. She was under immense pressure. Her marriage was struggling, yes, but not because of Chase. Because of her own demons. I felt my grip on the cane tighten until my knuckles popped. He was going there. He was going to blame the victim. He was going to paint my daughter as unstable to justify his client's crime. We believe," Finch said, pausing for effect, "that Maya Bennett crashed that car on purpose. We believe she was depressed. We believe she felt trapped by her father's controlling nature and her own failures. We believe she drove into that guardrail in a cry for help, a suicide attempt that went wrong, and now her father is trying to pin her tragedy on her husband to save the family name." A murmur went through the courtroom. The press scribbled furiously. I looked at Chase. He wasn't looking at the jury, was looking at the table, a small smirk playing on his lips. He liked this narrative. It absolved him. It made him the victim of a crazy wife and an evil father. It was a disgusting strategy, a strategy born of desperation. But it was effective. The jury looked thoughtful. Some of them looked at me with suspicion, wondering if the rich old man really had rigged the game. The prosecutor, a woman named Sterling who had a reputation for eating defense attorneys for breakfast, stood up. She didn't shout. She didn't pace. She just adjusted her glasses and looked at the judge. "Your Honor, the people would like to call a witness not previously on the list due to new evidence obtained 48 hours ago. The judge looked over his spectacles. "Who is the witness, counselor? We call Salvatore Rossi to the stand." I saw. Chase's shoulders stiffen. The smirk vanished instantly, replaced by a rigid tension. He knew the name. He knew exactly who Sal was. Finch jumped up. "Objection. Your Honor, this is a surprise witness. The defense has not had time to prepare." The judge waved him down. "Overruled. The witness is relevant to the mechanical failure of the vehicle. Proceed." The side door opened and Sal walked in. Sal was a big man with grease permanently etched into his fingerprints. He wore a clean shirt for court, but he looked uncomfortable, like a bear forced to wear a tuxedo. He walked to the witness stand, his eyes fixed on the floor, avoiding Chase's gaze, avoiding everyone. He took the oath, his voice shaking. Ms. Sterling approached the stand holding a file. "Mr. Rossi, can you state your occupation for the court?" "I am a mechanic," Sal said quietly. "I own Sal's Auto Body on 4th Street. And do you know the defendant? Chase Miller?" Sal nodded. "Yes, I know him. He brought his cars to me, the Porsche and the sedan." Ms. Sterling pulled a photo from the file. It was a picture of the mangled brake line from Maya's car. "Mr. Rossi, did you service a 2018 sedan belonging to Maya Bennett 2 weeks ago?" Sal looked at the photo, swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. "Yes. And what service did you perform?" Sal took a deep breath. He looked at me sitting in the gallery. I nodded just once. A promise that if he told the truth, I would protect his family from the fallout. "I didn't service it," Sal whispered. "Speak up, Mr. Rossi," the judge ordered. "I didn't service it." Sal said louder, his voice cracking. I sabotaged it. The courtroom erupted. Gasps, shouts, the sound of reporters typing frantically. The judge banged his gavel. Order. Order in the court. Ms. Sterling waited for the noise to die down. You sabotaged it. How Chase came to me. Sal said the words tumbling out now fast and heavy. He came to the shop on a Tuesday. He was frantic. He said he needed money. He said his wife was going to leave him. He asked me to look at the brakes. And what did he ask you to do? Miss Sterling asked. He asked me to cut the line, Sal said, looking at Chase now, his eyes full of regret. He offered me $5,000 cash. He said he wanted it to look like wear and tear. He said just loosen the bleeder valve enough so the fluid leaks out slowly. He said he wanted the pedal to go soft when she was driving fast. The jury stared at Sal in horror. They looked at Chase, who was shaking his head, mouthing, liar, liar. Did he tell you why he wanted this done? Ms. Sterling asked. He said he needed an insurance payout, Sal said. He said if she got into an accident, the policy would pay for medical trauma. He said he didn't want to kill her, just hurt her enough to get the check. But I told him, Sal's voice broke. I told him if the brakes go at 60, she could die. And what did he say to that? Sal wiped a tear from his eye with a rough hand. He said, she is worth more dead than alive anyway. Just do it, Sal. I need the money for Dubai. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. It was the silence of a grave. Finch, the defense attorney, sat down heavily in his chair. He knew it was over. He looked at his client with pure disgust, realizing he had been defending a monster. Ms. Sterling walked back to her table. She didn't need to shout. She didn't need theatrics. The truth was loud enough. One last question, Mr. Rossi. Did you take the money? Sal reached into his pocket. He pulled out an envelope. It was thick, stained with oil. Yes, Sal said, putting it on the railing. I took it. I needed it for my kids' tuition, but I never spent it. It felt like blood money. I kept it in my safe. I want to give it back. I want to go to jail. I deserve it. Chase stood up, slamming his hands on the table. He is lying. Chase screamed, his voice shrill and desperate. Langston paid him. My father-in-law paid him to say this. It is a setup. Sit down. Mr. Miller, the judge roared. No, I won't sit down, Chase shouted, pointing at Sal. You took the bribe from him, didn't you, Sal? How much did Langston give you? 10,020. Tell them the truth. Sal looked at Chase with pity. The truth is, you are cheap, Chase, Sal said. You offered me $5,000 to kill your wife, and you paid me in hundreds. That smelled like stripper perfume. You are the one who paid me. And I have the text messages on my phone to prove it. Sal held up his cell phone. He texted me the instructions, Sal said quietly. He texted me. Make sure it happens before the weekend. I have a flight to catch. Chase collapsed into his chair. It wasn't a physical collapse. It was a structural failure of his entire reality. The text messages, the money, the confession. There was no way out. There was no spin room left. Finch moved his chair away from Chase, creating a physical distance between himself and the defendant. He was done. I looked at Chase. His face was gray. His eyes were hollow. He looked across the aisle at me. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just looked at him with the cold indifference of a man watching a bug burn under a magnifying glass. The judge looked at the jury. We will take a 15-minute recess, he said, his voice tight with suppressed anger, as the bailiff moved to handcuff Chase to take him to the holding cell. Chase looked back at the gallery, looking for anyone who might believe him. He saw the faces of the jury. They weren't looking at him with doubt anymore. They were looking at him with hatred. He looked at me. I mouthed 2 words to him. Game over. Chase lowered his head and let them lead him away. The shackles clinking on his wrists sounded like the bell tolling for his funeral. I stood up, leaning on my cane. Miss Sterling walked over to me, gathering her papers. We have him. Mr. Bennett, she said. It is a slam dunk. I nodded, watching the empty door where my son-in-law had just vanished. He thought he could buy a life for $5,000, I said. Miss Sterling shook her head. He bought a life sentence, she said. I walked out of the courtroom into the hallway. The press was waiting. The cameras were flashing, but I walked right through them like a ship, cutting through waves. I had one more witness to call, one more nail to drive into the coffin. Bella was waiting in the witness room, and she had a video. That was going to make Sal's testimony look like a bedtime story. The courtroom was silent, save for the hum of the ventilation system, but the tension was loud enough to deafen a man. The jury was already shaken by the mechanic's testimony. They were looking at Chase Miller not as a grieving husband but as a man who might have bartered his wife's life for a handful of cash. But the prosecution was not done digging the grave. They had one more shovel full of dirt to throw. The prosecutor, Ms. Sterling, stood up and smoothed her skirt, looking at the gallery before turning her gaze to the judge. The people called Bella Thorne to the stand. A murmur rippled through the room. Chase stiffened in his chair, his head snapping toward the double doors. He had thought she was gone. He had thought she was halfway to Los Angeles trying to salvage her influencer career. He didn't know that I had kept her in a safe house for 3 days, ensuring she arrived here to drive the final nail into his coffin. Bella walked in. She was not wearing the flashy designer clothes she wore in Dubai. She was wearing the simple black dress, no jewelry, her hair tied back. She looked young, terrified, and most importantly, she looked credible. She walked past the defense table, refusing to make eye contact with Chase, who was staring at her with a mix of betrayal and panic. She took the oath, her voice trembling slightly. Ms. Sterling walked over to her holding a tablet. "Ms. Thorne, you were with the defendant in Dubai on the day of the accident. Is that correct?" "Yes," Bella whispered. "And what was the nature of your relationship?" Chase flinched. "We were dating," Bella said. "He told me he was separated. He told me his divorce was final, pending paperwork. He said he wanted to take me on a business trip to celebrate his new company. And did he mention his wife, Maya Bennett?" "He mentioned her," Bella said, looking down at her hands. "He said she was difficult. He said she was the only thing standing between him and his fortune." Ms. Sterling nodded, tapping the screen of her tablet. "I want to show the court a video, Ms. Thorne. This was recorded on your phone in the hotel room at the Burj Al Arab approximately 1 hour after Mr. Miller received the news that his wife was in critical condition." Chase jumped up. "Objection, Your Honor. This is private, privileged communication." "Overruled," the judge said sharply. "Sit down, Mr. Miller." Ms. Sterling connected the tablet to the courtroom's main display screen. The large monitor on the wall flickered to life. The video was shaky, filmed vertically. It showed Chase standing on the balcony of the hotel suite, the Dubai skyline glittering behind him. He was holding a glass of champagne and he was smiling. It wasn't a nervous smile. It was a triumphant one. The audio played loud and clear through the courtroom speakers. "Babe, put the phone down," Chase said on the screen, laughing. "I just got the alert. The news is reporting a crash on I-95, a sedan matching her car." "It is done." Bella's voice came from behind the camera. "Are you sure, Chase? What if she is okay?" "She won't be okay," Chase said, taking a sip of the wine. "Sal knows what he is doing. If she hit that guardrail at 60, she is gone. And even if she survives, the brain damage will be severe enough to trigger the clause." "I am rich, Bella. We are rich." The video ended, freezing on Chase's smiling face, a portrait of pure evil. The courtroom erupted. The jury members were gasping. One woman in the back row covered her mouth, looking at Chase with pure horror. The press were typing furiously. Chase sat frozen, his face pale, the blood draining from his skin. He looked at the jury, trying to find a sympathetic eye, but there were none. He had been exposed not just as a cheater, but as a man who celebrated his wife's potential death with vintage champagne. Ms. Sterling turned off the screen. No further questions. Bella stepped down, wiping a tear from her cheek. She walked out of the courtroom, leaving a silence that felt heavy and suffocating. The defense attorney, Mr. Finch, looked at Chase. He looked at his notes. He closed his folder. He had nothing. He couldn't cross-examine a video. He couldn't argue with a man's own voice, celebrating murder. "The prosecution rests," Ms. Sterling said. The judge looked at the defense. "Mr. Finch, do you have any witnesses?" Finch looked at Chase. He shook his head. "No, Your Honor. The defense rests." "Wait." I stood up from the gallery, my voice booming in the quiet room. "I am not a witness for the defense," I said, leaning on my cane, walking toward the aisle. "But I have a statement. The victim's family has a right to be heard regarding the character of the accused before sentencing. Recommendations are made." The judge looked at me. He knew who I was. Everyone in the city knew who I was. "Mr. Bennett, this is irregular," the judge said. "Usually impact statements are reserved for the sentencing phase." "I understand, Your Honor," I said, stepping through the gate, "but I believe the jury needs to understand the mathematics of this crime before they deliberate." They have seen the emotion. I want to give them the numbers. The judge hesitated, then nodded. Proceed, Mr. Bennett. But keep it brief. I walked to the witness stand. I didn't sit. I stood, my hands resting on the wooden railing, looking out at the court. I didn't look at Chase. I looked at the jury. I am a logistics man, I began, my voice steady, cold, devoid of the grief that had been eating me alive for a week. I spent 40 years moving freight across this country. In my business, we don't deal in feelings. We deal in dates, times, weights, and costs. If the numbers don't add up, the truck doesn't move. I pulled a small notebook from my pocket. The defense wants you to believe this was a tragedy of passion or a mistake of a desperate man. But desperation is emotional. Murder is a calculation, and Chase Miller is a very bad mathematician. I opened the notebook. Item 1, I read, $500,000. That is the amount Chase wired from my daughter's savings account to a shell company in the Cayman Islands on September 4th. He labeled the transaction Tech Investment. The shell company is registered to a P.O. box in a strip mall in Nevada owned by Chase Miller. I turned the page. Item 212. That is the number of women Chase has been involved with in the last 3 years while married to my daughter. I have the receipts for the hotels, the dinners, and the gifts, all paid for with Maya's money. He didn't just cheat. He funded his infidelity with her labor. Chase shrank in his seat, trying to make himself invisible. Item 3. I continued, my voice rising slightly hard as granite. October 14th. That is the date Chase Miller purchased a term life insurance policy on Maya Bennett. The payout is $5 million in the event of accidental death or permanent incapacitation. I looked directly at the jury. He bought the policy 3 days before the crash. 3 days. He didn't buy it to protect her. He bought it because he knew he was about to cash it in. He bet against her life, and he rigged the game. I closed the notebook with a snap. You heard. The mechanic. You saw the video. You know he cut the brakes. But the numbers tell you why. He didn't kill her because he hated her. He killed her because she was worth more dead than alive to him. She was a line item on a spreadsheet, a transaction to be closed. I turned to look at Chase for the first time. My daughter is in a hospital bed learning how to speak again because you wanted a weekend in Dubai. You are not a businessman. Chase, you are a failed investment, and today we are closing your account. I walked off the stand. The silence in the room was absolute. It wasn't the silence of confusion, it was the silence of judgment. The jury didn't need to deliberate. They didn't need to look at the evidence again. I had laid it out in black and white. The judge looked at the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, you may retire to consider your verdict. The jury foreman, a middle-aged man with stern eyes, stood up. We don't need to retire, Your Honor. We have reached a verdict, Chase gasped. It had been less than a minute. The judge raised an eyebrow. Very well. Read the verdict. The foreman looked at Chase with a look of utter contempt. In the matter of the people versus Chase Miller on the charge of attempted murder in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. Chase sobbed, his head hitting the table. On the charge of grand larceny, guilty. On the charge of insurance fraud, guilty. On the charge of conspiracy, guilty. The word guilty rang out like a hammer striking an anvil over and over again, pounding Chase into the ground. The judge nodded. He looked at Chase. Mr. Miller, please stand. Chase didn't move. Finch had to grab him by the arm and haul him to his feet. Chase was shaking his legs, barely holding him up. Chase Miller, the judge said, his voice deep and resonant. You have displayed a level of depravity that shocks the conscience. You betrayed your wife, you betrayed your family, and you betrayed the basic tenets of humanity, purely for financial gain. You treated a human life like a commodity. The judge adjusted his glasses. You wanted to live the high life, Mr. Miller. You wanted luxury. Well, the state is going to provide you with a very secure room for a very long time. I sentence you to 25 years in the state penitentiary without the possibility of parole for the first 20 years. And upon release, you will be required to pay full restitution of $500,000 to the victim. Maya Bennett. 25 years, Chase screamed. It was a raw, primal sound. No, you can't do that. That is my whole life. I am young. I am a visionary. You are a criminal, the judge said, banging the gavel. Case closed. The bailiffs moved in, pulling Chase's arms behind his back. He struggled, kicking and screaming. Langston Chase yelled, looking at me, his eyes wild. "Do something. You can't let them take me. I am family." I stood there leaning on my cane watching him. "I am not family." "Chase," I said calmly, "I am the board of directors, and you are fired." They dragged him out the side door, his screams echoing, down the hallway, fading into the distance until there was nothing left but the hum of the air conditioner and the scratching of pens. I took a deep breath. The air in the courtroom tasted different now. It tasted clean. Ms. Sterling walked over to me, closing her briefcase. Justice was served. "Mr. Bennett?" she said. I nodded. I looked at the empty chair where Chase had sat. "Justice is just the beginning," I said. "Now comes the hard part, the healing." I walked out of the courtroom into the bright afternoon sun. The press was waiting, shouting questions, asking for a statement. I ignored them. I walked to my car where Vance was waiting with the door open. "To the hospital. Vance," I said. My daughter was waiting. And for the first time in 5 years, she was safe. The monster was in a cage and the keys were at the bottom of the ocean. The sound of a heavy steel door slamming shut is a sound you never forget. It is final, absolute, and cold. It is the sound of a life being cut off from the world. I stood in the visitation room of the correctional facility, a gray concrete box that smelled of industrial bleach and hopelessness. The air conditioner hummed a low, monotonous drone trying to scrub the scent of fear from the air, but failing miserably. I was wearing my best suit, a charcoal gray three-piece that cost more than the building I was standing in. I leaned on my cane, watching the door on the other side of the plexiglass partition. I didn't have to be here. The trial was over. The verdict was read. Chase Miller was sentenced to 25 years for attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy. I could have gone home. I could have sat on my porch and watched the sunset with a glass of tea, knowing the monster was caged. But I am a businessman, and in business you never close a deal without a final walkthrough. You never sign the contract without looking the other party in the eye one last time to make sure they know exactly who won. The door buzzed and opened. Chase walked in. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit now, a bright, jarring color that washed out his pale skin. His head had been shaved, stripping away the styled hair he used to spend an hour on every morning. He looked thinner, gaunt. The arrogance of the courtroom replaced by the hollow look of a man who is learning how to survive in a shark tank. He sat down on the metal stool on the other side of the glass. He picked up the black phone receiver, his movements slow, deliberate. I picked up mine. "Hello, Chase," I said, my voice calm, steady. Chase looked at me. A slow sneer spread across his face. It was the same look he used to give the waiters. He undertipped the same look he gave me when he thought I wasn't watching. It was the look of a man who still believed he was better than everyone else, even while wearing a state-issued uniform. "You came to gloat," he said, his voice crackling through the receiver. "You came to see the animal in the zoo. I came to say goodbye," I said simply. "Goodbye," Chase laughed. It was a dry, harsh sound. "I am not going anywhere, Langston. I have 25 years right here in this chair. I have plenty of time." He leaned forward, pressing his forehead against the glass, his eyes locking onto mine with a cold intensity. "You know what keeps me going in here," he whispered. "It isn't remorse. It isn't fear. It is math." "Math?" I asked. "Yes, math," Chase said, smiling, showing teeth that hadn't been brushed properly in days. "You are 74 years old, Langston. You are an old man. You walk with a cane. Your heart is weak. I read your medical file in Maya's office. I know about the arrhythmia." He paused, letting the threat hang in the air. "I am 35, he continued. "I am young, healthy. I will do my time. I will behave. I will get out in 20 years, maybe 15, with good behavior. And when I walk out of those gates, you will be dead. You will be a name on a tombstone. And Maya." He licked his lips. "Maya will be alone. She will be vulnerable without her daddy to protect her. And I will find her. Langston, I will find her, and I will finish what I started. I will take the money, I will take the house, and I will dance on your grave." I listened to him. I didn't interrupt. I let him pour his poison into the phone. I let him reveal the depths of his depravity one last time. It was exactly what I needed to hear. It was the confirmation that he was beyond redemption, that there was no soul left to save inside that orange suit. He thought he was playing the long game. He thought time was his ally. He didn't know that I had bought the clock. I sighed, adjusting my cufflink. You make a compelling case. Chase, I said. You are right. I am old. I might not be here in 20 years, and Maya is soft-hearted. She might forgive you. She might let you back in. Exactly, Chase said, leaning back, looking satisfied. I win in the end. It is just a waiting game. I nodded slowly, tapping my cane on the floor. But there is a flaw in your calculation. Chase, I said. What flaw? Chase asked. You are assuming you are in a state prison, I said. You are assuming you are a ward of the government protected by taxpayer dollars and bureaucratic indifference. Chase frowned, looking around the room. What are you talking about? This is a prison. It is a private prison. Chase, I corrected him. It is a for-profit facility. The state contracts out its inmates to corporations to save money. And this particular facility, the North Creek Correctional Center, is owned by a holding company called Sentinel Corrections. So what? Chase scoffed. It is still a prison. Yes, I said. But do you know who owns Sentinel Corrections? Chase went still. The sneer vanished. I pulled a folded document from my inside pocket and held it up to the glass. I do, I said. I bought it, Chase. I bought the controlling interest in Sentinel Corrections yesterday morning. It cost me $40 million. It was a lot of money, but for quality of the asset, I think it was a steal. Chase stared at the paper, his eyes darting back and forth, trying to process the information. You bought the prison, he whispered. I bought the company that owns the prison, I said, laying the paper down effectively, making me your landlord, your boss, and your warden. I leaned closer to the glass, my voice dropping to a low rumble. You think you are going to sit in a cell and read books for 20 years? You think you are going to lift weights and plan your revenge? You are mistaken. I signaled to the guard standing by the door. The guard nodded to me, respectful, deferential. He wasn't just a state employee anymore. He was on my payroll. We have a work program here. Chase, I said. It is voluntary for most inmates, but for those with restitution orders, like the $500,000 you owe my daughter, it is mandatory. Work, Chase stammered. I don't do manual labor. I have a bad back. You have a debt, I said, and you are going to work it off. I pulled out a calculator from my pocket. Let us do the math, Chase, I said. Since you like math so much, you owe Maya $500,000. The wage for inmate labor in this facility is 40 cents an hour. I punched the numbers into the calculator, showing him the screen. At 40 cents an hour, working 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, you will earn roughly $100 a month. After deductions for room and board, which I am legally allowed to charge you, might clear $20. $20, Chase whispered. That means, I said, ignoring him, it will take you approximately 2,000 years to pay off the principal, not including interest. Chase looked at the guard, then back at me, panic rising in his chest. You can't do that. That is slavery. It is the penal system. Chase, I said, and as the owner of the facility, I have taken the liberty of assigning your work detail personally. I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a wolf looking at a trapped rabbit. You aren't going to the library, I said. You aren't going to the laundry. You are going to the recycling center. We process industrial waste here. Chase sorting copper wire from burning insulation, breaking down old electronics, stripping lead from batteries. It is hot, it is dirty, and it smells worse than the sewer, and you are going to be there every single day for the next 25 years. No. Chase stood up the stool, scraping loudly against the floor. No, I won't do it. I will refuse. I will get a lawyer. Your lawyer quit, I said. And if you refuse to work, you go to solitary confinement. The hole. Chase. 23 hours a day, in a concrete box, with no window and no human contact. For as long as I say so. Chase looked at the walls of the room. He looked at the heavy steel door. He realized for the first time that the walls weren't just keeping him in, they were closing in on him. He wasn't fighting the justice system anymore. He was fighting me, and I had home field advantage. You are insane, he screamed, spitting at the glass. "You are a psychopath. You can't own a human being." "I don't own you, Chase," I said, standing up, smoothing my jacket. "I just own your time, and I plan to spend every second of it making sure you never have the energy to think about my daughter again." I turned to walk away. "Wait!" Chase yelled, slamming his hand against the glass. "Langston, wait! Don't leave me here. You can't leave me with these people." I stopped and looked back over my shoulder. "You said I would be dead in 20 years, Chase," I said. "You were right. But here's the difference. When I die, I will die in my bed, surrounded by people who love me, knowing I protected my family." I looked him up and down, taking in the orange jumpsuit, the shaved head, the terror in his eyes. "When you die, Chase, you will die in here, broken, tired, and forgotten. And the only thing you will leave behind is a pile of sordid trash." I signaled the guard. "Take him to his new assignment," I said. The guard moved forward, grabbing Chase by the arm. "No," Chase screamed as they dragged him toward the rear door. "No, let me talk to Maya. She won't let you do this." "Langston, please, I am sorry, I will pay it back. Just don't make me work." I watched him struggle. I watched the fight drain out of him, replaced by the crushing reality of his future. He wasn't a visionary. He wasn't a millionaire. He was inmate, number 492, an employee of Bennett Logistics doing the dirty work no one else wanted to do. The door opened, revealing a dark corridor beyond. I could hear the distant clang of machinery, the shouting of men, the grinding of metal. It sounded like the belly of a beast. Chase looked into the darkness, then back at me, one last time. "You are the devil," he sobbed. I smiled, holding the handle of my cane. "No, Chase," I said. "I am a father." The door slammed shut, cutting off his screams, silencing his threats, leaving me alone in the gray room. I stood there for a moment, listening to the silence. It was a beautiful sound. It was the sound of a debt paid in full. I walked out of the visitation room, past the guards who nodded at me, past the warden who shook my hand. "Mr. Bennett," the warden said, "is everything to your satisfaction?" "Perfectly, warden," I said. "Keep him busy." I walked out into the bright sunshine of the prison yard. The air tasted sweet. The sky was a brilliant blue. I took out my phone and dialed Maya's number. "Hey, baby girl," I said. "Hi, Daddy." She answered, her voice stronger today, clear and bright. "It is done," I said. "He is handled. We don't have to worry about him ever again." "Thank you, Daddy," she whispered. I got into the back of my car. "Home, Vance," I said. The engine purred to life. The prison faded in the rearview mirror, a concrete tomb for a man who thought he could outsmart a father's love. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in months I slept without dreaming. The seasons change slowly up here at the lake. The green of summer fades into the burnt orange of autumn, and then the stark white of winter covers everything in a blanket of silence. It has been a full year since the trial, 12 months since the gavel fell and the heavy steel doors of the North Creek Correctional Center slammed shut on Chase Miller. A year is a long time in the logistics business. In a year you can move 1,000,000 tons of freight, you can build a fleet, you can bankrupt a competitor. But in the business of healing, a year is just a single breath. I sat on the wraparound porch of my cabin, the wood creaking softly under the rocker. The air was crisp, smelling of pine needles and wood smoke. I held a mug of hot tea in my hands, warming my fingers against the ceramic. The tea was Earl Grey, Maya's favorite. I never used to drink it. I was a black coffee man. But things change, habits change. I watched the figure walking down the gravel path toward the water. It was Maya. She was walking, slowly, using a walking stick that I had carved for her from a piece of hickory. It wasn't a medical cane, it was a hiking staff, a symbol of strength, not weakness. She had a slight limp, a hitch in her step that was the permanent souvenir of the crash. The doctor said her leg would never be fully the same. The metal pins in her ankle would ache when it rained. But she was walking, she was upright, and most importantly, she was walking away from her past. A golden retriever puppy stumbled around her feet, tripping over its own paws, barking at a squirrel that was mocking him from an oak tree. Maya laughed. It was a sound I hadn't heard in 5 years. It wasn't the polite, stifled laugh she used to give at Chase's dinner parties. It was a belly laugh, a full-throated sound of pure joy that echoed off the water. I took a sip of tea, feeling the warmth spread through my chest. We had been busy this year. Recovery wasn't just about physical therapy and learning to trust her balance again. It was about scrubbing the stain of Chase Miller from her soul. The first thing we did was the name, the day the divorce was finalized. Maya stood in front of the judge wearing a blue dress that brought out the color of her eyes. She didn't look at the empty chair where Chase's lawyer sat. She looked at the bench. The judge asked her, "Do you wish to retain your married name?" "Mrs. Miller." Maya didn't hesitate. "No, Your Honor," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I am a Bennett. I want my name back." When the clerk handed her the stamped paper declaring her Maya Bennett, once again I saw her shoulders drop 2 inches. The weight was gone. She wasn't defined by her mistake anymore. She was defined by her blood. But we didn't stop there. We didn't just want to survive, we wanted to fight back. We wanted to make sure that what happened to her didn't happen to anyone else. We used the money, the $500,000 that Chase was ordered to pay in restitution. It was a slow trickle coming from his prison labor. Wages a few dollars a month, but I matched it 1,000 times over. We started the Bennett Foundation for Financial Justice. We opened an office downtown, not in a glass tower, but in a community center accessible to the people who needed it most. We hired lawyers, forensic accountants, and therapists. We created a task force to help women who had been victims of financial abuse, women whose husbands had stolen their futures, women who had been coerced into signing loans, women who were trapped in marriages because they didn't have a bank account of their own. Maya ran it. She wasn't practicing medicine yet. Her hands were still too shaky for surgery, but her mind was sharper than ever. She sat across from these women and she listened. She held their hands when they cried over empty bank accounts. She told them her story. She showed them her scars. She told them I was a doctor and I got conned. It can happen to anyone. I watched her transform. She went from a victim to a warrior. She used her pain as fuel. She was fierce, protective, and relentless. And as for Chase, I set my tea down on the railing and picked up the manila envelope that had arrived that morning. It was the monthly report from the warden of North Creek. I opened it, slicing the seal with my thumb. Inmate 492, performance review. I scanned the document. Chase was currently assigned to the e-waste recycling line, stripping copper wire from old refrigerators. It was grueling work. The report noted that he had lost 20 pounds. He had developed calluses on his soft hands. He had stopped filing complaints. He had stopped asking for a lawyer. He had stopped talking about revenge. He was just a number now, a cog in the machine, a small, insignificant part of the inventory. The report said he spent his recreation time sitting alone in the yard staring at the wall. He had no friends in prison. The other inmates knew what he had done. They knew he had tried to kill his wife for money, and even in prison there is a code: you don't hurt women and children. Chase was a pariah, an outcast in a society of outcasts. I closed the file. I didn't feel glee. I didn't feel triumph. I just felt satisfied. It was the feeling of balancing a ledger. The debt was being paid day by day, hour by hour, sweat by sweat. I looked back out at the lake. Maya had reached the water's edge. She threw a stick for the puppy. The dog tripped over his ears and tumbled into the shallow water, splashing around happily. Maya clapped her hands, cheering him on. "Hey, Daddy," she called out, waving at me. "Look at him. He thinks he is a seal." I waved back, raising my hand in a salute. She looked happy. She looked whole. She looked like the little girl I used to take fishing on this very dock 30 years ago before the world got its claws into her. I realized then that I hadn't just saved her life. I had saved her future. I had bought her time. Time to heal. Time to love again. Time to be herself. The sun began to dip below the tree line, casting long shadows across the yard. The air turned cooler, hinting at the winter to come. But I wasn't cold. I had a fire in the hearth inside, and I had my daughter safe on the lawn. I picked up my tea, finishing the last drop. It was sweet. I thought about the journey we had taken, the panic in the hospital waiting room, the rage in the courtroom, the silence of the empty house. It had been a war fought not with guns but with information, with money, and with the absolute refusal to surrender, and we had won. Not because I was rich, not because I was powerful, but because we were a family, and family, when it is real, is the strongest force on earth. I stood up, picking up my cane, not because I needed it, but because I liked the weight of it in my hand. "Come on inside, baby girl," I shouted. "The wind is picking up. I am making stew." Maya turned and smiled. She whistled for the dog. "Coming! Daddy!" she yelled. She started walking back up the path. Her limp was still there, but she was moving forward. She was always moving forward. I held the door open for her. She walked past me, smelling of fresh air and lake water. She kissed my cheek. "I love you, Daddy," she said. "I love you too." "Maya," I said. I watched her walk into the warmth of the cabin. The dog shook himself dry, spraying water on the floor. I laughed and closed the door, shutting out the cold, shutting out the past, locking the world away so we could just be us. I walked to the fireplace and threw another log on the grate. The sparks flew up the chimney, dancing like fireflies. I sat down in my leather chair and looked at the photo on the mantel. It was a new one taken last week. It was Maya and me standing in front of the foundation sign. We were both smiling. Real smiles. I closed my eyes and listened to the crackle of the fire. "I am tired," I whispered to the empty room. "But it is a good tired. The world is full of wolves. Chase was just one of them. But as long as I am breathing, the sheep in my pasture will sleep safe because the shepherd is awake, and the shepherd has a very big stick." He took a deep breath, letting the peace settle over me. Mission accomplished. Love can be blind, but a father's protection must have 20/20 vision. We teach our children to be kind, to give, and to trust, but we must also teach them that not everyone deserves a seat at their table. When you see red flags, do not paint them white just to keep the peace. Peace built on lies is just a war waiting to happen. True power isn't about controlling others, it is about having the strength to cut the cord when the person you love is being destroyed by the person they love. Protect your heart, but protect your assets too, because sometimes they are the only shield you have left. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat and you believe in protecting your family at all costs, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a story about justice served cold. Let me know in the comments if you have ever had to rescue someone you love from a bad situation or so. I read every single one. Until next time, stay sharp, stay safe, and remember, never let anyone mistake your kindness for weakness.